television, radio, the printed word, all report the news. But who covers the people who cover the news? Reliable sources, a weekly look at the press with Bernard Cow, Sunday on CNN International.
CNN International updates global weather 24 hours a day. Look for the forecast for selected cities in your region and travel advisories worldwide. CNN International, your source for news, business, and sports, is now the place to turn for global weather.
Two interesting facts have just emerged.
It happened 7 hours and 25 minutes ago, roughly, maybe 7 hours, 24 minutes. The it was an earthquake, and now 17 people are confirmed dead. The earthquake struck Southern California this morning. Let's look at this report from Deborah Zara.
It rattled millions of people from their sleep around 4:30 Monday morning. A powerful earthquake centered in Northridge in the San Fernando Valley, roughly 20 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles. Homes and apartment buildings crumbled, some freeways collapsed, train cars derailed and flipped over. Police and fire officials believe dozens of people could still be trapped in their cars or homes. Governor Pete Wilson already is asking the Federal Emergency Management Agency for help.
All of a sudden, the whole station started shaking, and all I could think was the door. Just, get to the door, opened the door, came outside. I started going towards the street. I looked back, and all of a sudden, I heard the sound. And if you can see, the building next door just, tumbled on top of the station.
Our room started shaking earlier. Dressers went flying everywhere. Dishes are all over the floor. So our house is pretty messed up. But I've never seen. That was the biggest earthquake I've been in.
If you smell gas, get out. Don't be in there if you smell gas. But you're going to kind of have to help yourself. All right, we're committed behind here. We're not going to be able to help you for a little while.
More than 50 fires are now burning in the Los Angeles area, many of them caused by natural gas pipeline ruptures. Water, power, and phone lines are also down in much of the area. Residents here, needless to say, are rattled, fearful of a strong aftershock.
Come on, get the rhythm back. Let's get the rhythm back. Keep going.
Seismologists say this was a powerful quake because it centered only 9 miles beneath the surface of the earth.
We live above a garage and then 3 stories above, and that's pretty much buckled under.
We've had a major gas leak. We can't control the gas right now, and we've got 5 houses burning right now. No water supply, and we're by ourselves.
They didn't have enough water pressure to break through the window, so they're only pouring it up on the roof. So the whole fire had like a half an hour, 45 minutes to build inside the building.
That's my door. I was standing underneath that doorway to get protection, and I opened the door to see if he was okay. That's the door that fell right in front of me.
The jolts were felt as far south as San Diego and nearly 300 miles east in Las Vegas. People in Los Angeles are now cleaning up, hoping this is the last of a frightening and nerve-shattering episode. Deborah Zara for CNN, Los Angeles.
Frightening and nerve-shattering, 2 descriptions of what we've gone through in their city. I'm Bernard Shaw. It started for me at 4:31 this morning. I'm going to stand aside now. Frank Sesno will be sitting in here very shortly as CNN continues its live coverage of this earthquake in Southern California. The death toll right now, 17 dead and scores injured.
CNN International.
If you can't better in Atlanta, I'm Jonathan Mann. We'll rejoin CNN's live coverage of the California earthquake in just a few moments. But first, a look at some of the other stories making news at this hour. Programming schedule to continue to follow CNN's domestic coverage of the California earthquake and its aftermath. Let's listen in.
You don't know when we're going to be able to call anybody, or I don't even know what's going on. I wish I had a radio right now.
Yes, we're on the 17th floor of our hotel, and everything that was on a shelf or on the wall is now on the floor, and we just had to run to get out of there and run down the fire exits, which were full of water, to get out. And we're just out on the street now, sort of making sure nothing will fall on our heads.
This your first earthquake?
Absolutely. First time in LA and first earthquake. We went to San Francisco first, and we were a bit concerned there, but it got us here.
Well, you're laughing and smiling now when it happens.
Well, I'm laughing and smiling because I believe the earthquake's over. I hope we're not in the middle of it.
I was sleeping there with about 4 or 5 of my buddies, and we ended up running out of the house. We came outside, we looked over to the house next door. All the neighbors started coming out over here. We were worried about the house to our right that ended up burning down. We ran in with like 3 or 4 of my fraternity brothers, and we ran in there, and they were asleep. They slept right through it. Ended up just pulling them out and brought them outside, and then.
Jason, was anybody hurt in this immediate neighborhood that you know of?
Yeah, what happened was this truck right here, this white dually. Right. We had the water. I guess the line broke or something like that, and what happened was this truck tried to shoot through it. Ended up igniting the fire somehow, and it blew up. We were all out here. It knocked us all down.
I don't know. It stalled. What about the people in the truck? Do you know the person in the truck?
I believe they're deceased. I'm not sure.
They were on. One of them jumped out of the truck. He was on fire when he jumped out of the truck. The driver. There was a passenger. What happened was this was all just water that was first just shooting into the air about 75 feet, and we set up these little stalls, these little posts, the cones to just stop people from coming in. This guy came in through that side, and it was just a poof. It wasn't an explosion. It just went poof, and then just fire. It's just straight in the air.
Now the process of mopping up and cleaning up is underway. We want to join our affiliate KTLA now. They're in the process of watching the rubble being dug out in one area as they talk with a seismologist about the process of earthquaking buildings and roadways, the risks involved. Let's listen.
That, of course, concerns you because we should have learned our lessons and been able to take care of that. Now, I don't know, though, without further analysis, what the cause of that failure might have been, and so it's difficult to sit here and be judgmental. But certainly I'm concerned, and I think we all ought to be concerned, and we need to decide, do we want to really go after this problem in a way that will resolve it? And what is our commitment? Certainly when there's an earthquake, we have a tremendous commitment to solve this problem. Usually 6 months to a year later, people forget that, and we have other things that we want to get onto. So the question will be, I think, in this case, again, can we have a sustained commitment to finding out what the problems were and correcting them? And we need to do that, I agree. We've got to resolve this problem.
Professor Iwan, we are going to see a lot of the interchange you were talking about earlier with the I-5 and the I-14. Earlier, I think you said that was a single column structure, but it's not known if that was retrofitted since the earthquake in San Francisco.
From the pictures that I've seen on TV and from what I know about the general nature of that structure, I believe that it was a single column structure. I do not know whether that was part of the retrofit program, but it appears, in fact, that the column is still standing. That may say that there's another problem.
And even a problem separate from, say, the road beds as well, since that was...
that could be. And, without really analyzing the situation, it's awfully hard to say what the cause of failure was. But it's clear that that's an unacceptable failure that took place at that point. And we have to figure out what it was and how to correct that.
What's the first step that your commission will take from this point on?
The responsibility of the Seismic Safety Commission is to advise the governor and the legislature on seismic safety policy. It's not our responsibility to meet the immediate needs of the community following the earthquake. The Office of Emergency Services is doing a good job at that. Caltrans will be in the field looking at bridges. After the disaster and its immediate consequences are over, the commission will likely hold hearings and try to find out really what did happen, what were the causes of what happened, and what corrective action needs to be taken in the future, and make that recommendation to the governor and to the legislature.
And you can also, as you said, sponsor legislation. Have you done that in the past?
We have sponsored legislation in the past. Of course, getting a person from the legislature to carry that. Yes, we have.
Dr. Iwan, in India, you talked about a very soft first floor and structural weakness and lateral loading. What is that?
Okay, the major damage to structures usually arises from horizontal shaking, not vertical shaking. And so we need to provide some mechanism to allow the structure to be forced in a horizontal way without collapsing. And you can imagine if you stuck a solid block up on top of a couple of posts, it doesn't have much strength when you shake it horizontally, and it can just basically tip over. And that's what we call a soft first floor. There was a tendency at one time, and sometimes still even today, to design structures where the first floor had either a different use or some different structural makeup and was much weaker than the upper floors. So basically what you had was a rigid box sitting on posts. parking structures are sometimes like that. And what I see from the television, I see that there may in fact be some apartments with the lower floors or a parking area. You want to keep it open. You don't want to put a lot of what we call shear walls. These would be walls that would carry those loads into the walls, and so they just put some columns there. If they're not designed adequately, they won't carry the loads that are put into the structure by the earthquake, and it can collapse.
Dr. Alwyn, just look at this picture if you would for a second. It looks that the column of the highway is standing there rigidly, and the highway just collapsed around it. You can see the metal rebar is just bent off, and the highway just cracked and fell. What does that tell you?
Well, it would say that the detail of the structure at that point was inadequate for this particular earthquake, apparently. And that's a very easy statement to make. But why was it inadequate? I don't know. Was it because the shaking there was amplified to a degree that was not anticipated? It could have been a local soil condition that caused a very unusually high input at that point. It could have been a variety of factors. But yes, you're right. From just looking at the pictures, it seems like the connection between the column and the roadbed failed in this particular case.
Dr. Iwan, in India recently there was an earthquake of 6.4 that killed thousands. Here in California we had an earthquake of 6.6 in a highly urbanized area, and so far the death toll is not 20. So does that tell us that we're doing something right?
I think it does, and thank you for asking the question. But as you look at earthquakes in California over the years, I think you can see that a lot of what has been done has paid off. And so if you'd had an earthquake like this 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, I think you would have seen a considerably different thing happening. Now, of course, we would have had some of the freeways and so on 50 years ago. So we build our own new technologies that get damaged. But I think there has been a greater level of awareness of the earthquake problem, more precautions to deal with the earthquake problem, and I think we're better off, certainly, than some countries where there have been no precautions and the construction is just very, very poor and substandard.
I was wondering if we could make the comparison. This earthquake is close to the same size as the 1971 earthquake, but it is located in a worse area in that it is located under the urbanized part, whereas in 71 it dipped down under the mountains, and much of the fault plain was located under the mountains. So this is the same size, closer to people, and at least at this point the death toll seems to be lower.
In fact, you might mention, too, remember in 71, those of you that were here, the very serious problem at that time was with hospitals. And we had the collapse of the Veterans Hospital and the loss of considerable life there. We had many other hospitals in the area that were non-functional. I think one of the great accomplishments, and I haven't seen all the details, but I suspect one of the great accomplishments that's taken place in the last few years is that the increases in hospital safety have paid off, and that we now have a much more functional hospital system. That we're not seeing that the hospitals are overloaded, or that we've lost hospitals offline that are not usable in an earthquake. And these are significant improvements in safety that I think we need to recognize.
Also, Dr. Iwan, if you will, the overall emergency response system, our lifeline system, you mentioned hospitals, also police, the firefighters, the National Guard is now being called out, etc. In your mind, how has that response been for this quake?
Well, I think it's excellent. And again, every time we have a major earthquake like this, we learn something. And what I see happening in the state level is that those lessons are put into practice very quickly. And so I'm sure we'll see in the Office of Emergency Services response to this earthquake, even though it's been good in the past, it'll, I suspect, be improved this time because of the lessons that they've learned. We are learning how to deal with earthquakes. We are, I think, doing a better job. But it's clear, as some of you have asked me questions, that there are still probably areas where we need to improve. And what we need to do is find out what are those areas, where are we inadequate, and then is society willing to pay the cost to improve those areas, because it does take money.
And also,
so as you can tell, seismologists are already beginning the process of trying to draw lessons from what happened here, taking some solace in the fact that the damage wasn't worse and that there has been a lot of retrofitting in and around Los Angeles since over the course of the last 20 or more years in preparation for a very severe earthquake, but also noting that what went wrong and where it went wrong is going to be the source and subject of considerable engineering study in the time to come. One other note, Governor Pete Wilson has called out some 1,500 National Guardsmen to help maintain order in the Los Angeles area. Well, our coverage of the Los Angeles earthquake will continue, and don't go away. We'll be back. is roughly 8 hours now after the violent earthquake that hit Southern California. The terrible toll is just now becoming apparent. The quake toppled some apartment complexes, collapsed freeways in certain sections, and sparked dozens of fires. At least 17 deaths are now confirmed, but we have reason to believe that toll is climbing higher. Several injured and died when their apartment building collapsed in Northridge. We'll be hearing more from that location in just a moment. Area hospitals have treated scores of victims for mostly minor injuries. Aftershocks continue to rock the area, some as strong as 5 on the Richter scale. Much of the city in Los Angeles County were blacked out for hours. At least 100,000 homes were without electricity this morning. Governor Pete Wilson has declared the region a disaster area.
There is concern chiefly with respect to fires that have broken out as a result of gas leaks, and we are unable to confirm loss of life. There are 3 confirmed fatalities, but reports of more that we cannot confirm.
Can you tell us exactly what it is specifically you are requesting of FEMA?
Well, in addition to the kind of assistance that they will prepare to give in the aftermath of the emergency, there may very well be the need for some additional aerial firefighting capacity if in fact the fire danger or the fires exceed the capacity of local firefighting crews.
Now, again, that was recorded earlier. You heard the governor say that there were 3 confirmed dead. That figure has climbed since then. We're now reporting an official death toll of 17 at this time. We are expecting a news conference by the governor later in the hour. When that happens, we will, of course, bring it to you live. James Lee Witt, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and HUD Director Henry Cisneros are heading to Los Angeles today. Well, the nightmare scenario here, or anywhere where there is a disaster of this sort, is what happens where people live close together, where the density is quite high, an apartment building, for instance, where people are literally stacked one upon the other when that apartment building collapses. Our Robert Vito joins us now from Northridge, where that nightmare scenario has happened with tragic and deadly results. Robert?
Good afternoon, Frank. Indeed, it has been just a nightmare, this terrible disaster at this apartment complex. Fire officials confirmed that 12 people have indeed died inside that complex during the earthquake this morning. Residents describe it as violent, vicious, like a bomb went off. And there are about 150 apartments here, and officials say that about 300 people lived inside. Rescuers were able to save more than 24 residents trapped beneath the rubble. They dug in some cases for hours. They had dogs in to try and lead them to the locations, and many described it as just a miracle that anybody survived. The building that covers nearly a half square mile actually was lifted several feet off its foundation by the quake. When it came back down, it hit with such force that the entire first floor was actually pushed beneath the ground. Authorities say it was mostly residents of the first floor who were killed, and most of those who were seriously injured were from the first floor. There were indeed many examples of bravery here, individuals crawling through the rubble of the apartment complex. Fire officials say they were individually responsible for saving the lives of many people. In the meantime, the Red Cross and the Salvation Army are on scene, and they're setting up evacuation centers for many people who wondered where they would go from here. With me is Kim Cohen, who lived on the 3rd floor of this apartment complex, and you rescued your teddy bear.
Well, actually,
and you survived, thank goodness. What was it like, as so many have described?
well, I was sound asleep, and I was with my boyfriend, and all of a sudden I felt a regular earthquake, which I had been in before. But after it got started, it exploded upward. And so there was a big boom up, and then it came down, and then it kept shaking, but it was very violent. And I couldn't get out of bed because of the intense movement, and it was throwing me all over the place. And finally, I was able to get up out of bed. I checked the entire apartment. Everything was completely smashed. The the bureau, everything was out of the bureau. The television came crashing down. The refrigerator was broken. Everything in the dishwasher was thrown out. All of the dishes were completely smashed. And everything in the apartment that wasn't bolted down moved, shifted, or broke.
All of us who live out here hear over and over again to be prepared for this kind of an earthquake. I must admit that while I was sort of prepared, we were really negligent in a lot of areas in terms of being prepared. How about you?
Well, we had the water ready. We had bottles of 7-Up, and Brian, who's my boyfriend, grabbed for a bottle of 7-Up and also got some water. And he also, we didn't have the food, we didn't have the cans, we didn't have the earthquake kit, but we were prepared just in the event to at least have water handy, as I do. And we had a problem because we were trapped inside of the apartment because the door, once it was open, wouldn't actually open because the lock was twisted, so we couldn't pull the door. He was able to stick something in there and work it and actually pull it open, and finally got us out. When we tried to get out of the one stairwell, it was completely crumbled. And so we went back the other direction. We found that the landing for the steps was about a foot below where it usually is, and the steps were twisted, but we were told that we can still get down there. He got me out safely and then went back in, got the teddy bear for me. And he also saved about 6 people who we could hear them as we were leaving. Help me, please, I'm stuck. My door is closed, I can't get out. So he went around and tried to actually open the doors and kick the doors down. He got a lot of people out, and a lot of people were safe. And we didn't realize the damage that had actually happened until we walked outside and saw that the entire building, the second floor, had actually crushed onto the ground. It smashed both his car and my car to where we can't even see the cars.
It is amazing when you look at it. It looks like a 2-story apartment building, but it's actually a 3-story apartment building. Did you smell any natural gas?
No, the apartment is electric.
Good. Thank you very much,
Thank
Kim.
you.
And that's the way it goes here. People continue to cope. Aftershocks continue to rumble through, and we'll see what happens next. Reporting live, Robert Vito, CNN.
Robert, before you go away, if I can throw a couple of questions at you. You're at that apartment scene, but what can you tell us about the area where you're standing? Is this one island of terrible destruction amid most buildings that were left untouched, or is this very widespread about where you are?
It's a good question. Around here, there are several. This is the largest apartment complex that sustained damage. But we've talked to a lot of other people who live in nearby apartment complexes that were also so badly damaged that they can't move back in, and they too have to find a place to live. But it's a very high population area, and a lot of people obviously living close together and all suffering from the same tragedy.
And precisely how are rescue officials proceeding now? Are they using chainsaws and shovels to hack through? Do they have power equipment, dogs? What are they doing now?
Dogs, power equipment, chainsaws. They're walking through, searching through the rubble, foot by foot, story by story. And the difficult part is getting to the area that went actually below ground level. There's so much rubble, there is so much debris, and there continues to be great concern because of aftershocks to further damage the building.
And just to repeat, to be sure, you are now saying that fire officials there are reporting 12 confirmed dead in that apartment complex.
That's correct, Frank.
Okay, Robert Vito, thanks very much. We'll be back to you later on in the afternoon, of course. Just to bring you up to date, in case you're just joining us and somehow haven't heard, a dreadful earthquake shook the Los Angeles area at 4:31 a.m. this morning. Officials now confirming 20 dead in the Los Angeles area, the epicenter in the San Fernando Valley, where I might note some 3 million people live just in that valley alone in this huge, sprawling city of Los Angeles. We are expecting the governor of California to hold a news conference sometime this hour. When that happens, we will bring it to you, and of course, we will take you around the city to bring you up to date on what is being done to put the pieces back together again to save those who are still trapped under the rubble. Our coverage of the California earthquake will continue.
is happening, you want to be there. I've spent my life seeing a lot of folly, bureaucracy, misery, brutality, but I've also seen gallantry and generosity and genius. I couldn't think of doing anything else. I'll probably be doing it when I'm 90.
And you heard this screeching sound, and then all of a sudden saw these lights come flying off. This is about 45 minutes to an hour after the earthquake. And it's a LA police officer, motorcycle officer, come flying off there and hit the pavement. And we ran over to him, and he's face down, so we very gently turned him over, and he was just bleeding uncontrollably from the mouth and the nostrils, and I mean, just there was some movement in the mouth, but it appeared that there was no breathing at that point.
This is CNN International.
We'll be rejoining CNN's live coverage of the California earthquake in just a few moments, but first a look at some of the other stories making world news at this hour. Russian President Boris Yeltsin is expected to announce a cabinet shuffle Tuesday after the resignation of Economics Minister Yegor Gaidar. On Sunday, Gaidar announced that he would not accept a position in Mr. Yeltsin's new government. Gaidar had effectively launched Russia on the path of economic reform 2 years ago. Another key reformer, Boris Fyodorov, also is threatening to leave the government. His departure would strengthen the hand of more conservative members of the Yeltsin government. Officials in the Crimean region of Ukraine say a runoff presidential election will be held most likely by the end of the month. Preliminary results show separatist Yuri Meshkov got more than 38% of Sunday's vote. Historically part of Russia, the Crimean Peninsula was given to Ukraine 40 years ago by Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. For his part, Meshkov says he has no intention of removing Crimea from Ukraine and only wants economic cooperation with Russia. In Germany, 2 young neo-Nazis were convicted Monday of beating a member of the U.S. Olympic luge team. The 2 were accused of kicking and punching sled racer Duncan Kennedy outside a bar last October. Kennedy said he was beaten up after he came to the aid of a black teammate who was being taunted by a group of skinheads. One of the youths was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in prison. The other was given a 1-year sentence. That's a look at some of the stories making world news this hour. I'm Jonathan Mann. We're going to rejoin CNN's live coverage of the Southern California earthquake right after this.
Who supplied the seed that made this computer grow friendlier? The brains that made this card smarter? Who drives the action here and the interaction here? Who's behind the systems that start people talking and save their smiles forever? Motorola is the name behind the names. Advanced microchip technology companies around the globe are choosing because at Motorola, quality means the world to us.
2 interesting facts have just emerged from a 1993 study of AGB data on major brands in the recession. Even in growing markets, advertisers who reduce their spend lose brand share, whereas advertisers who increase their spend tend to increase their brand share, especially in declining markets. For the full story, call the Association of Media Independents on 071 971 0091.
If you can't be there for all the excitement of global sports competition, on the field and around the track, stay on top of the action, the scores and the highlights with CNN International every hour round the clock. And remember, CNN International brings you live coverage of breaking news from around the world.
The Iraqi president here is determined.
Live updates from Europe and the global hotspots.
The residents of Sarajevo forced to dodge snipers.
News features on lifestyles worldwide. International business programs. Plus live reports from the world's financial capitals. In-depth global weather and interviews with entertainers and experts on international issues.
I get asked in lots of interviews, who are you prepared not to like?
For sports, news, business, and weather, Turn to the one source seen in over 200 countries and territories. CNN International, the world's news leader.
A main architect of Russia's reform program bows out. Economics Minister Yegor Gaidar resigns, leaving questions of Russia's future and concerns of President Yeltsin's next move. On World Business Today, only on CNN International.
We're going to return now to CNN's extensive live coverage of the earthquake that shook much of Southern California earlier this day, an earthquake that measured 6.6 on the Richter scale and has already taken fatalities.
Southern California continues its attempt to dig out from under the earthquake that struck the city this morning at 4:31 a.m. as millions of residents slept, only to be jolted awake by a horrifying sensation of violent shaking in their homes, in their bedrooms, homes creaking, in some cases collapsing. We are joined now by John Garamendi. He is the California Insurance Commissioner. Mr. Garamendi, we were talking before we went on the air of the number of people who don't have earthquake insurance. What happens to them? What happens to those who do have it?
About 25%, maybe 30% of California homeowners have purchased earthquake insurance, which is separate from the regular homeowners insurance. Now, if their house burns down, they'll be covered, but if they only have structural damage as a result of the earthquake, they may not have coverage at all for the structure. Interior contents will probably have some sort of coverage.
Cars?
Cars will be covered.
Only if they've got earthquake insurance?
No, the car is covered if it's crushed, depending upon the kind of policy. Usually people carry comprehensive, which would cover that.
Now, I know this is a preposterous question, an impossible one to ask, but I do want to ask it in case you've heard any rough ballparks. We try to get a sense of damage estimates. You heard anything yet?
No, we haven't. The insurance industry that will eventually compile those numbers is probably just now getting their own telephones back in order to take calls from their various customers. Now, most of the insurance companies do have disaster plans. In fact, they all do, at least those in California. Those disaster plans should be operating, but it'll be some time before we have numbers.
From what you've seen with your own eyes on television and passing by, what kind of neighborhood of damage do you think we're talking about out here?
Well, I think it's going to be very extensive, particularly to the public works. I was just down at the Santa Monica Freeway at Fairfax, and we're looking at a half-a-mile stretch that's just wiped out. That's going to have an enormous impact on the commerce of California, particularly in Southern California. That is the main artery, east to west, here in this city.
Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions?
Oh, we're going to be in the hundreds of millions for sure by the time this is all added up. Now, how much individual damage on the homes that is not covered by insurance at all? There'll be small damage, structural problems. You'll find chimneys that are gone, various cracks. All of that will add up. And probably we estimated early on that if there were to be an earthquake of this kind, it'd be well over $1 billion if it occurred in an urban area. This has.
How are you functioning and operating?
Well, as best we can. My main office here in Los Angeles, which has our hotline number, is shut down. Nothing is working there in that office.
So people who would call your hotline now cannot.
That's correct. We hope to be up and operating either later today or tomorrow. We're going to try to transfer out of that office building into another facility a little further away from this urban area.
What do people do now who have sustained damage? Should they be calling the state? Should they be calling their insurance company? Should they be sitting tight?
The first thing to do is to make sure you're safe. Forget about insurance, forget about calling the state or insurance company. Make sure that you're safe, that your gas is turned off if there are any leaks at all. There will be aftershocks, as you have reported, so be safe. There's time enough to take care of the house later. Once things have settled down, if things are not shaking, you got things under control, then phone your agent broker and begin the process of filing a claim and getting that kind of help. And make sure you know what your insurance policy is. Go through, read it over, see if you have earthquake coverage.
There are earthquake survival kits public services have been preparing for this moment. Are you set up for this moment? Are the insurance companies prepared to handle the crush of claims that's sure to follow?
Our department is set up. We have gone through this drill now 5 times since I became commissioner. This is the 3rd major earthquake in California, first one in an urban area. We've had the fires in Oakland and here in Southern California, and we've had some floods. So we're prepared. The insurance companies all have their disaster plans. All of those plans should be in order. In fact, the insurance companies also have a program where they take and duplicate all of their records and keep those far apart in different parts of America in safekeeping so they can regenerate their records.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency is on its way. States of emergency and disaster have been declared. What does that mean for those who have sustained damage and for the city?
For the city, for the public agencies, it means a great deal. The Federal Emergency Management Agency means immediate assistance, personnel, and money.
Did you feel that aftershock just a moment ago? I thought I felt something rolling there.
We've become very sensitive. I think I just hit your chair.
No, actually, I'm told it was an aftershock. I thought so, but I didn't want to say so. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's quite okay.
Go ahead with what you expect.
The federal government brings enormous immediate resources to bear in terms of personnel by marshaling the personnel throughout the state and other places. It also means money to rebuild the infrastructure of the city, the public works projects, which you can already see are enormously damaged. For individuals, it means that there could be help if there's no other insurance or no other resources available. The federal government can step in.
How will the state mobilize now to get the engineering expertise and the construction expertise on the ground deployed, especially in the freeway system, which is going to be so disruptive to this city?
Well, again, we've had practice. The Loma Prieta earthquake 5 years ago gives us a good understanding of this. The Caltrans department will be mobilized. Engineers from all over the state will come to this area. Contractors, I'm sure, are already being contacted to clear the immediate damage and to make our freeway somewhat passable. We are, however, looking at some areas to things being shut down for some time.
Okay, John Garamendi, thank you very much. I'm told that Dee Dee Myers, the White House press secretary, is preparing to hold a news conference live at this time at the White House. We go there now.
Today's event and the empowerment zones, I thought I'd give you an update on the earthquake. President Clinton was informed about the earthquake this morning by Secretary Cisneros, who called him around 8 o'clock. Told him about the situation. The president then called his brother in Los Angeles, Roger Clinton, to make sure that he was okay, which he was, just to get an assessment from him about events that had transpired. He then turned on the television and watched, flipped around from channel to channel, watching developments there. Meanwhile, the White House was informed early this morning as the earthquake was happening. Christine Varney and others, Mac McClarty, were notified, and they began to put the sort of response process in motion. Mac talked with FEMA Director James Lee Witt, who began coordinating federal assistance immediately. The president then notified people that he wanted to be briefed in more detail at about 11 o'clock. So he came in about 10, was brought up to date again by Mac McClarty, was briefed in more detail at 11 o'clock, at which time he placed calls to James Lee Witt, who told him he was on his way out there, had already been in touch with people on the ground, both state and local officials. The president then called Mayor Reardon and told him that he was watching the situation closely, that his heart and the hearts of everybody in the country was going out to the people of Southern California, and that the White House would work and the federal government would work as closely as they could with state and local officials. The president then spoke to Governor Wilson, and the governor informed him that a disaster declaration would be coming today, and the president said he would sign that as quickly as he could. We expect that this afternoon, and we hope to have the president sign it this afternoon, and we will provide some kind of a forum for that, probably 5 or 5:30. Andrea? What would that specifically? It will sort of launch a number of programs. Basically, it will provide low-interest loans for the replacement of homes, businesses, and personal property. Those are provided by FEMA, SBA, and the Economic Development Association, which is part of Commerce. There'll be additional cash grants provided by FEMA. Longer-term disaster housing, up to 18 months for people who lose their homes. Clearly, we don't know yet how many people that will affect. That's coordinated by HUD and FEMA. There's other programs including emergency food stamps, disaster unemployment assistance, and crisis counseling. And finally, public assistance for rebuilding roads, bridges.
Hospitals
immediate damage assessments?
It's too early to say. James Lee Witt and Secretary Cisneros are on their way out there now, as is John Emerson. Mac McClarty asked John Emerson, who's a deputy assistant here at the White House, to go to coordinate White House efforts on the ground. Christine Varney, who is the cabinet secretary here in the White House, is coordinating events here. The president asked James Lee to call him and to stay in close touch with him when he arrives out there. He's expected to leave right about now, weather permitting, arriving in Los Angeles around 8 or 8:30 tonight. If the local officials there, the state and local officials, and James Lee and others believe the president can be useful, we'll certainly take a look at that.
Maybe this week?
Again, it will depend on assessment of things on the ground. I think the president is waiting to hear from them. Secretary Pena is also on his way out there. He was in Birmingham today. He left from there and is expected to arrive in Los Angeles around 6. Not expected. There is somebody from Commerce going, Assistant Secretary of Commerce Larry Parks, who's with the Economic Development Administration.
Have you been able to reach your family, and can you tell us what their experience has been?
Unfortunately, I have not been able to reach my own family. As you know, many of you know, I'm from there. I did hear from friends of the family. My family is fine. The house is not in such good shape, as are a number of people. My parents live in Sand Canyon, which is quite close to the intersection of the 14 and 5 freeways where the interchange collapsed. The house has suffered quite a bit of superficial damage, and it's unclear to me whether there's any structural damage, so it's a mess. My parents are fine, thank you. This is my parents' house, yeah. Yeah. So, others in the neighborhood I grew up, there's a lot of damage in my hometown. Unclear. I think the northern San Fernando Valley appears to be hardest hit. And I think it'll take some time before we know exactly what the damage is, again, which is why the president has sent a team out.
Still going.
We have just had a very large and significant aftershock here as Dee Dee Myers spoke. It lasted for probably 4 or 5 seconds. John Garamendi, you're still with me? You think
10 seconds.
10 seconds, pushing it. It was a rocking motion here that we felt in the studio.
Still going.
In fact, I feel it's still going.
Yeah. We were, that was a good one.
Yeah, it depends how you define good, I suppose.
Well, it didn't knock anything else off your shelf here. I noticed you do have one vase from before.
Yes, we do, apparently from before. But again, now I know you're... Am I feeling it still?
Yes.
I believe I am.
Yes, you are.
I know you're not a seismologist, but you've studied this and you're very familiar with it because you live with it. These aftershocks now will continue for a period of days and weeks even, correct?
That's correct. We always see this pattern. You see a big shock. Usually, maybe there's a few foreshocks, smaller ones, which perhaps we saw in the Santa Monica Bay last week. And then you get a big one, and then you get a series of aftershocks. This one that we just had is going to go up there probably in the 5 or 6 range, I would guess.
That was a big one. Now, the danger, of course, is that several of the structures that were damaged to a significant but not collapsing degree earlier could be undone by some of these aftershocks.
There's no doubt about it. I just left the Santa Monica Freeway, which you saw the collapsed freeway section. I'll bet that came down another couple of feet as a result of this one. Structures themselves are going to be shaken, and they'll fall as a result of these aftershocks. Very dangerous time.
Let's go back now to the White House and Dee Dee Myers, who continues her briefing.
Again, I think has directed federal officials to work very closely with state and local officials to provide whatever assistance the federal government can. The first thing I think is to assess the damage, and the second thing is to provide whatever assistance state and local officials request and is possible to put forward.
How long do you expect them to stay out there?
As long as it takes.
How much money do you think will be required initially to get the federal government's response going?
I don't have any initial assessments yet. I think that will. Christine says that we expect something, an initial assessment later today. I think it may take some time before we can have an accurate assessment of the damage.
But is money available already in terms of not going back to Congress and requiring additional appropriations?
Yes.
How much money is available?
Unclear. I think that there are a number of different ways that we can assess money or tap money that's already in the system. We've done it for other disasters this year. It's been a busy year for James Lee Witt and the folks over at FEMA between the floods and the fires and now the earthquake.
Hey, Paul, you spent those accounts down now, didn't you?
No, I think he was notified within a half an hour of the quake, and certainly the White House was notified immediately and began to take appropriate action.
He was notified by Cisneros. No.
Yeah, he was.
8 o'clock in the morning?
Correct. The earthquake struck around 7:30 Eastern time.
Judy is an earthquake veteran,
and well, I am something of an earthquake veteran, actually. It's hard to tell. It's a little unnerving to see your community suffering another quake like this, and it's been a tough couple of years for Los Angeles generally. I think the president's concerned about that, as are all of us. I'm certainly not an expert on earthquakes, but the biggest one I was ever in was, I think, 6.1 in 1971, which is did a severe amount of damage. I think that there's great concern about the disruption in transportation due to collapsed freeways, about just damage to homes and to other building and infrastructure, and we're just going to take a look at it and do whatever we can to help rebuild. Frank?
I remember the president saying that both the floods and the hurricanes have spent accounts down. He's actually borrowed from other accounts. Has there been any consultation with Congress about perhaps an emergency appropriation?
Glad you asked that. Actually, the White House has been in touch with all members of the California delegation who are affected by this, including Senators Feinstein and Boxer, and then members of Congress Tony Bielenson, Henry Waxman, Howard Berman, Jane Harmon, Julian Dixon, Lucille Roybal Allard, Javier Becerra, and the president will probably speak directly to some of them later today.
What about the leadership? Would it be necessary to get money?
The president hasn't spoken to anybody yet. We've been, I think, focusing more directly on people who are affected. Certainly we'll consult with members of Congress as the week goes on. Today is a federal holiday, and a lot of the members, of course, are still out in their districts. So certainly we'll do what we can to marshal the requisite resources.
How is it not back until later in the week? Do you expect that there might be some kind of emergency request ready to go as soon as Congress comes back?
I think we'll have to take a look at that. Certainly we'll wait until James Lee and others get out there and can give us some kind of an assessment about what might be needed, but I wouldn't rule that out. Yeah.
Has the president talked to Governor Wilson, and have you put any thought into changing the 75-25 ratio between Fed and state disaster assistance?
Yeah, the president spoke to Governor Wilson around 11:45 this morning. The usual ratio is that public assistance is 25% state, 75% federal, 25% state and local. I don't know whether there have been any thought given to changing that yet or not. Certainly we'll have to wait and see how things progress.
The president might do one of these satellite TV addresses to the people in Southern California?
We haven't had a chance to discuss that yet. I think at this point we want to get a better view of what's happening on the ground. Again, I think the president wants to hear from James Lee Witt and others out there and assess the situation. Then again, he will be signing the disaster declaration. As soon as we have a specific time for that, we'll let you know. Again, probably 5 or 5:30.
Anybody else besides Governor Wilson?
No, it just.
Und wie viel dadurch der Volkswirtschaft verloren gegangen ist.
Die Experten, die wir heute gehört haben, haben unterschiedliche Zahlen genannt.
Spoken to any other members of Congress directly? Has he spoken to anybody else, like the mayor or anybody else directly besides Governor Wilson?
Yeah, Mayor Reardon, Governor Wilson, both this morning. I spoke to Mayor Reardon first at around 11:35.
Du darfst mich wieder hypnotisieren.
Wir haben in Thüringen ausgebildete
das Problem hat.
Ja, there was a
dass man also immer das weitergeht.
Not a big coincidence. A coincidence. No, that's a big coincidence. That's what the coincidence is. There are no small coincidences and big.
Veröffentlichung zusammen.
Sicher, ja.
Haben Sie denn auch die SPD-Spitze, den SPD-Parteichef informiert schon?
Ich habe den Vorsitzenden der SPD schon im vergangenen August 2 deutliche Hinweise gegeben, Wienand und Wehner betreffend. Er hat keine Nachfragen.
A 1 de la tarde.
Jedenfalls habe ich mich in letzter Zeit
I think that he was sleeping and just told the president what it was like going.
Well, that is Dee Meyer's briefing from the briefing room at the White House. I will tell you that during the 10 minutes or so that Dee Meyers has been briefing, we have had at least 3 aftershocks here in California, one of them fairly significant. Dee Meyers saying that the president has been in touch with officials throughout the day, being briefed. Mac McClarty, the White House Chief of Staff, coordinating things. Several federal officials, including the Transportation Secretary, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and the head of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, on their way to California to assess the damage. No damage estimate yet, but we can expect a federal disaster declaration to be signed by President Clinton later this afternoon after he receives a formal request from the governor of California, Pete Wilson. We're expecting to hear from him in a news conference or something along those lines shortly. I will be back in just a few minutes, and we will talk some more with John Garamendi, who is the California Insurance Commissioner. Please stay with us. I'm Frank Sesno in Los Angeles. Our coverage of the California earthquake continues. I'm joined still by John Garamendi, who's the California Insurance Commissioner. Mr. Garamendi, we heard Dee Myers at the White House saying that they don't have a definitive disaster estimate yet, and we talked a bit about that before. How long until that damage estimate can be put together?
We'll get some numbers tomorrow. The state, local government, state government will all be bringing in the numbers. We'll have a feel for it tomorrow. The houses will take a little while longer. By the end of the week, we should know pretty much how much the damages are going to be.
And as far as some of the damage done to the infrastructure, the roads, the gas mains, the water mains, is the municipality insured, or is that money going to have to come out of somebody's pocket?
Well, the money's going to come out of the pockets. Most are not insured. For things like this, that's where FEMA and the state come in and to backfill the local budget.
John Garamendi, thanks very much. We appreciate your time today. And we are told now that the official death toll here, 22 confirmed dead from the California earthquake, and unfortunately that number will probably rise throughout the day as the aftershocks continue and the search goes on for survivors. I'm Frank Sesno in Los Angeles. Thanks very much for joining us. Please stay with CNN throughout the day. We'll bring you the very latest on the California earthquake.
CNN International.
CNN International. It began with a simple idea: keeping the world informed 24 hours a day.
I think this was an amazing sight.
Covering global business and world markets 7 days a week. Reporting the vast scope of international sport. Updating global weather conditions around the world. Turning the spot.
We're going to rejoin CNN's coverage now of the Southern California earthquake that has taken more than 20 lives.
After the one this morning, everything else is like almost ho-hum. But there is that remaining concern, that fear that one even bigger than this morning will come, though officials have discounted that.
When that aftershock hit, Robert, I was talking with the California State Insurance Commissioner. Of course, he voiced great concern that buildings that have been partially damaged in the original quake may be further damaged with some of these aftershocks. Do you see anything around you that indicated further damage at this time?
Well, that was the first thing we looked for. We were standing adjacent to the apartment building, and when that hit, we looked up to see if the wall that we were fairly close to might come tumbling down. But we saw no further structural damage, and nothing else did come down, and so we just wait and see what happens.
Okay, Robert Vito, thanks very much. Do take care. Do take care out there. We want to take you across Los Angeles now to Sylmar, the site of that terrible freeway collapse earlier today, where there was also loss of life. Our Greg Lamont is standing by. Greg, what is the scene where you are, the rescue efforts and that?
Well, Frank, as you mentioned, that the large aftershock, there were a couple of them over the last half hour to 45 minutes. We felt them quite fervently out here. And what it did was behind us, where we've seen this collapsed freeway, ironically set off car alarms for the cars that were caught into the collapse when the collapse occurred at 4:31 this morning. What you're looking at is the 14 freeway, which intersects with the Interstate 5. This is where a Los Angeles police officer on his motorcycle was racing to work as part of the emergency response to the worst earthquake to hit the Los Angeles area this century. The officer did not make it, apparently plunging to his death on the collapsed concrete. 7 other people were injured as well, 2 critically, including a woman. If I could have my cameraman Demir kind of pan around over here, you can see how twisted and broken down the freeway is. But if we pan over here to my right, you'll see this car that is up on the freeway, and that car was occupied by a woman who was 6 months pregnant. She was critically injured and was rushed, as the other 7 injured people were, to area hospitals via helicopter. Eyewitnesses say the quake was so intense that their cars began actually jumping across the roadway. The Golden State Freeway is a major artery from Los Angeles to north into San Francisco. Here it intersects with the 14 freeway, and in the coming months this is going to be a nightmare for commuters, especially from the area of, say, Palmdale, which is a growing bedroom community for Los Angeles. They'll have to take side streets, and that will be quite a task for them. Gas leaks are prevalent in the area, and as has been mentioned throughout the morning, area utilities are asking people to please turn off their gas if they haven't already. They may have already contributed to some of the fires that we have already discussed this morning, maybe even that apartment fire where those 12 people were killed. There is certainly damage to other freeways. Water main breaks have city officials warning people not to drink their water out of the tap without first boiling it. Driving is certainly hazardous in the Los Angeles area. A lot of that has to do with the fact that there is no electricity to much of the city. As a matter of fact, 100,000 homes are without electricity, and it also means that street signs are not operating, and in many cases people who normally look up and think that they can go right through the intersection do so, and that's certainly a hazard in terms of traffic accidents. Frank?
Greg, it might be worth noting here that this occurred obviously at 4:30 in the morning on Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. It could have been a lot worse where you're standing.
Unless you are from Los Angeles, it's hard to fathom, but the freeways are literally full 24 hours a day. When I first moved here, it just really took me by surprise when I was going from Orange County to Los Angeles at about 3 o'clock in the morning from my sister's house, and it was just as crowded as I might have found in, say, Washington, D.C. during rush hour. So at 4:31 in the morning, had this been a normal workday, this could have been much more tragic, frankly.
Greg Lamont reporting from Sylmar, site of that freeway devastation. Thanks very much. We will be back to you. Of course, we will continue our coverage of the California earthquake in the moments ahead. Our coverage continues.
Are you still living with this nightmare? Over 1 million motorists have said never again. They've switched to Triple Edge, and the difference is amazing.
This is the first set of wipers that really work for my car. Triple Edge has made my driving easier and safer.
Triple Edge is the world's first high-tech windshield wiper. It clears, it cleans, it wipes dry, all in a single pass. But that's not all. Triple Edge wipers are not made of rubber. They won't tear, dry rot, or freeze to your windshield. It's so strong, they're the last windshield wipers you'll ever need.
Triple Edge wipers are absolutely great. It's been raining for 2 weeks straight, and I almost enjoy driving in it.
Triple Edge gives you visibility through the heaviest downpour. It whisks away snow and ice. Even mud is not a match for Triple Edge. State troopers, ambulances, and taxi cabs are now using these incredible wipers. Shouldn't you?
The day after I got my Triple Edge wipers, we had a big snowstorm with blowing sleet and wind. Everybody had trouble seeing except me. My visibility was beautiful.
Join the satisfied million who have switched to Triple Edge. No noise, no streaking, no smearing, no tearing. They're custom fit to install in seconds on your car, van, or truck. Order yours now. They're the last windshield wipers you'll ever buy.
For credit card holders and for details on how to pay in your own currency, call your local number on screen now. Operators are standing by to take your order. If lines are busy, please call later, but do call. You can order in all of these countries, so don't delay. Call your local number, and we'll deliver right to your door. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Call now. You can order in all of these countries, so don't delay. Call your local number, and we'll deliver right to your door. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Call now.
Our coverage continues now. President Clinton's brother, Roger Clinton, was in Los Angeles this morning as that earthquake hit. The president was able to talk with Roger Clinton by telephone to make sure he's all right. Mr. Clinton expects to declare the quake zone a disaster area later this afternoon. A White House spokeswoman says it should happen around 5 or 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, that declaration would clear the way for a variety of federal disaster assistance for quake victims and the city.
I have spoken with Governor Wilson and with Mayor Reardon by phone. I've assured them that we intend to do everything we possibly can to help the people of Los Angeles and Southern California deal with the earthquake and its aftermath. I've also spoken with James Lee Witt, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He is probably, as we meet here, on his way to California. Secretary Cisneros, I know, is going out later today. We may have other representatives of the government there. We have done everything we can, both to provide the resources and the backup we need.
The president says despite the fact that federal emergency services have been stretched thin recently due to Midwestern flooding and California fires, the system is organized and ready to go to deal with this latest disaster that is still unfolding here in California. Well, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, already has sent out dog teams and other experts to help search the rubble for earthquake victims who are still trapped. FEMA keeps the special dog teams and sensitive listening devices around the country for such emergencies. Officials also are gearing up to offer earthquake victims the government's array of disaster help.
The main thing we can do is to provide individual assistance, individual family grants, if need be, temporary housing, whatever we may have to do to fill the resource that the state does not have.
FEMA Director James Lee Witt is expected to arrive here in California shortly to monitor the federal disaster effort and to take stock of the damage. FEMA already has a field office in Pasadena because of the recent brush fires in the Los Angeles area. Long-distance telephone companies are restricting calls into the Los Angeles area. You may have experienced that, busy signals and busy circuits if you've tried to call in. The Red Cross is urging people seeking information to avoid jamming its lines here in L.A. However, for people interested in contributing to the Red Cross to help with disaster relief, that number is 1-800-842-2200. Now, a note. A spokeswoman for the insurance industry estimates that 75% of the homes and businesses in California do not have earthquake insurance. Claims for fire damage and looting probably will be covered under most homeowner policies. But unless people bought special earthquake insurance policies, such things as broken windows, crumbling foundations, and collapsed roofs or walls will not be covered. Well, when we come back, we will hear some people's harrowing stories of what it was like to be caught in the great earthquake of '94.
The National Organization for Women, ACLU. Senator Robert Dole.
In the eternal search for the truth, you're bound to raise some eyebrows, step on a few toes, butt heads.
The Young Republicans. The U.S. Congress.
So if we've inadvertently offended anyone along the way, Pat, Michael, and John would like to offer their most sincere apologies. Crossfire on CNN International. Lively talk, healthy debate.
I'm Jan Hopkins in New York with a CNN Business News update. A late wave of buying on Wall Street pushing the blue chips to a new record. Dow Industrials ended the session 3 points higher, but enough to go into the record books at 3870.29. A national holiday kept trading lighter than usual. Oil prices rallied Monday in New York, trading U.S. benchmark crude up 32 cents to $15.10 a barrel. Forecasts of prolonged cold weather boosting that market. A jump in silver prices sparked a rally in precious metals. In New York trading, gold gained $2.10 an ounce, silver up 10 cents, and platinum gaining $4.70 an ounce. The resignation of Russia's top economic reformer sparked fears of inflation in Russia and sent the ruble plunging. The ruble hit an all-time low against the dollar, trading at 1,402 rubles to the dollar. Against other major currencies, the dollar remained little changed. That's the latest in business news. World News continues after this.
mop up and still save victims trapped in the rubble from the terrible earthquake that struck at 4:31 a.m. this morning as Los Angeles slept. We want to take you to our affiliate now, KTTV, which is bringing us dramatic footage, I understand, a rescue attempt from someone who was caught in a street sweeper for several hours now in the Northridge area, not far from that terrible apartment complex where we now understand 12 people have lost their lives. Let's listen in.
And certainly now that his energy is no longer focused on actually getting out, that's usually what happens. That's about the point when the body decides, okay, it's going to shut down.
And that's one of the reasons that they have those fluids or blood volume expanders in there, because of the fluid pools in someone when they're traumatized like this. Just to let you know, this man has been trapped in a parking deck at Northridge since the earthquake hit at 4:30 this morning. He was in there because he works in there. He was cleaning at the time in a pickup truck. The whole thing collapsed around him. And not only did he have to endure that nightmare, but he's had to endure every aftershock all of us felt, thinking that the whole thing might come in on top of him. And these firefighters, as Al Naipo pointed out, have risked their lives because there was a huge steel beam that was shaky up above them there that could have come down at any time on top of them and on top of this individual who was buried inside. But their efforts have paid off now. He's out. He's headed to a helicopter. He's going to be airlifted to the UCLA Medical Center.
We understand that this is a 35-year-old man. Really, we don't know very much more beyond that, except that I would say he's made of pretty stern stuff to have endured the past 9 hours as he has.
Well, I should think so. And, you know, these guys, all public safety, firefighters, police, and this kind of thing, this is what they take for granted. The rest of us never should, because we could all be in that situation at any time. Remarkable effort by everybody involved here.
So the next step, he'll be transported onto a life flight helicopter, will be transported to UCLA, he will undergo extensive testing to see. Obviously, he's been coherent, but there is certainly the concern that there may be some substantial internal injuries, and that's what they'll be probably checking out for the better part of the afternoon.
As Al pointed out, though, an excellent sign that he was coherent. He was talking to those firefighters all day long, and I didn't know until Al told us just a second ago that there were 4 of those guys down beneath the...
So there you see it, just one of what is probably many dramatic rescue attempts taking place at this hour across California. In that particular case, a 35-year-old man trapped for 9 hours in a parking garage where he had been operating a street sweeper or something like that, when at 4:30 this morning the garage collapsed upon him. That is no mean feat, what we have just seen. Let me remind you that just about a half an hour ago, we felt a very violent aftershock here. For those rescue workers who are in such structures trying to save people like that, they are putting themselves at risk by standing in a structure that's already been compromised, already been weakened by the original earthquake, and there is considerable danger still lingering out there. We are joined now on the telephone, as I understand it, by Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat of California. You have been in touch not only with state officials, but I understand of late with President Clinton. What can you tell us, Senator, about what's underway at this time and what you're hearing?
Well, first let me say to those heroes that you are showing us on your incredible programming, we all love them and thank them, and we hope that God will be good and we will hear more stories of heroism. But I hope that people who are in harm's way, if they're not involved in a trained rescue effort, will get out of harm's way, because as you point out, these aftershocks are quite dangerous and the structures are already weakened. I want to say that the President phoned me, and he is very concerned. He is being briefed, constantly on this incredible earthquake. He has dispatched James Lee Witt and Secretary of Housing Cisneros to California, where we're all going to meet. I'm at the airport now in San Francisco, headed down to Los Angeles. Going to meet up with the 2 of them and with Secretary Pena, the Secretary of Transportation, to get a look at what is happening, to make sure that all the federal resources are brought to bear, and the President has pledged that 100%.
Senator Boxer, the governor has called out some 1,500 National Guardsmen, presumably to help maintain order. Are you hearing any stories of looting, anything that causes you concern in that regard?
The only thing I heard very early this morning was a very few cases, and I have to hope and believe that the goodness in people will come to the fore, and I hope if anyone's listening who's even thinking about taking advantage of this, whoever you may be, young or old, please, this is, Martin Luther King's birthday, and it's a time of love, not hate, and hope, not fear, and we need to pull together as a community. So please, let's use the National Guard to help rescue people and get our communities back, not to have to worry about looting.
Senator Barbara Boxer of California, thank you very much. At the airport, headed this way as we speak. Presumably we will be seeing her here in California in just a few hours. One thing worth pointing out before we go to break here for just a couple of minutes, you are seeing very dramatic pictures of fires, water main breaks, fires that are going along roadways that show where gas mains have broken, apartment building collapses. But Los Angeles is not a city in flames. There are very serious instances of damage peppered around the city. There are very serious sense of casualties. We have 22 confirmed dead now, and who knows how many hundreds injured by all of this. It has been a very, very frightening occurrence indeed. But Los Angeles is a city that is carrying on. As I drove here earlier today, I did see people reporting for work, construction crews at work on the side of some roadways, things proceeding normally. If you have friends or loved ones, you're outside of California now, let me tell you that it's been a very scary time, but the majority of the city still stands, and most people, though rather shaken, are carrying on with their lives. But we will be back to bring you more of this still very dramatic story here from Southern California in just a few moments.
Once again, war is raging in Europe. Once again, people are dying and starving. Once again, refugees have no place to go. Winter makes conditions even worse. What are you doing about it? Austrian Television ORF, together with Austrian Red Cross and Caritas, has initiated Neighbor in Need. So far, more than 1,500 trucks loaded with food and other urgently needed supplies have been dispatched to former Yugoslavia. If you would like to contribute to the charity drive, please send a check to Neighbor in Need, P.O. Box 1000, A 1091 Vienna, Austria, Europe.
Myron Candell, Deborah Marchini, Stuart Varney, Beverly Shook, Bill Hartley, Steve Young, Lou Dobbs. No one covers the world of business like the people of CNN International.
On Prime News, we have the luxury other evening newscasts simply don't. Time.
Time to go beyond the headlines, to examine the day's events at length.
And if that contributes to a greater understanding of the issues, then it's an hour well spent.
And hello everyone, I'm Natalie Allen at CNN Center in Atlanta. We will return to Los Angeles and our CNN crew out there for more earthquake coverage. First though, we'll look at some other stories of the day. Olympic contender Nancy Kerrigan skated today at a rink near her Massachusetts home. An orthopedic physician working with her says Kerrigan is doing well and he is cautiously optimistic. At a news conference, Kerrigan said she's trying not to allow the attack on her to distract her from practice.
It's hard. This whole thing has been hard enough, for me. I don't know, if I was younger, how I would handle it. And skating is my job, in some ways, besides the fact that I love it. I worked too hard to let this really interfere. I have to, when I'm on the ice, I really have to concentrate on my skating, and that's my job, so I have to just focus on that.
In Portland, the Oregonian newspaper today reports investigators suspect the man who attacked Kerrigan was paid $6,500 from a trust fund set up for figure skater Tanya Harding by the U.S. Figure Skating Association. The newspaper goes on to say investigators believe the money was a donation to the fund made by New York Yankees owner George Steinbrenner. Well, Mother Nature is causing some problems outside of the Southern California area as well today in terms of cold weather and icy conditions. Here's Flip Spiceland to give us an update. Flip.
Another blast from the Arctic. This one seems to be the worst, with very heavy snowfall and the coldest temperatures thus far. Wind chills just absolutely unbelievable. Devil's Lake in North Dakota reported a wind chill of 90 below. A little more realistically, as far south as Iowa, wind chills up 50 below. We will see daytime highs tomorrow, high temperatures tomorrow in this area of the upper Midwest, possibly staying in the double digits below zero. Now, the cold air is moving to the east along with very heavy snowfall, as much as 2 feet of snowfall in some places in the Ohio Valley. In Kentucky, they've reported as much as 23 inches of snow. Lexington has 9 or 10 inches of snowfall. In a place called Jackson, Kentucky, it was coming down at the rate of 2 or 3 inches an hour. Snowfall reaches into the northeast. You move a little farther to the south, and we're talking about freezing rain in North Georgia and over into North Carolina, making travel very, very treacherous. South of that, it's in the form of very heavy rainfall. Now, we do have a little bit of good news here, and we'll get to that in one moment, but first of all, a quick look at the CNN Color Radar Summary. Most of this is snow, although LaGuardia earlier in the day was reporting freezing rainfall, but bitter cold temperatures coming on in behind this. This is the leading edge of it, and this is where it will be by early tomorrow morning, with only light snow in behind it. But the news is that we believe the weather pattern is going to change. We've been standing in front of the weather map showing one Arctic air mass after another moving down through the eastern one-third of the nation. By later in the week, the ridge that has been in the west, this ridge of high pressure in the west, will be sliding slowly to the east, at least through the midwestern section of the country, cutting off this Arctic air flow. So stick through this one, the worst one thus far, and we think that some relief may be found later in the week with at least a little bit warmer temperatures to report throughout the eastern one-third of the nation. We will have continued coverage of the earthquake in Southern California right after this.
This is CNN International.
This is Peter Ustinov. In any war, those who suffer most and understand least are children. They lose their homes, schools, families, and too often their own lives. UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, is helping children in Somalia, the former Yugoslavia, and other war-torn areas. With your support, UNICEF can provide food, medicine, and blankets to thousands of children who are the innocent victims of war. Please help.
CNN's correspondent in Paris, Christiane Amanpour. 3 years with the BBC and 9 with CNN. She's been a reporter, writer, and producer. She's covered dramatic changes in Eastern Europe, the tragedy of famine in Africa, and was highly recognized for outstanding reporting during the Gulf War. With Christiane Amanpour in France, no one covers Europe like CNN International, the world's news leader.
Second, your impulse, quite understandably, is heartbreak for the people who have lost their homes. And our first concern is to prevent the loss of life. There's no way that words can express how you feel, what you say. There aren't any words that can comfort someone who has lost a loved one. But as we looked at the damage, we were grateful for the fact that it was not worse. What we saw structural damage to freeways. We saw some parking structures that had collapsed at shopping centers. Thank God this occurred at 4:30 in the morning. On a holiday, they might have been full of shoppers. We saw the same thing in the parking structure at Kaiser Permanente Hospital. We saw a number of mobile homes burned out. We saw a number of things that, we know means heartbreak on the ground. But again, we've seen a very good response, both from city government, from the state agencies that are involved. I think there's excellent cooperation. Both Mayor Reardon and I have spoken this morning with President Clinton, and they are moving as quickly as possible on the paperwork so that we will have the declarations of emergency necessary to trigger all the responses from federal, state, and local government. Dick, why don't you respond?
I think the governor has said it all. Our hearts go out to families who have lost loved ones, also to people whose possessions of a lifetime have been lost. But now we have to get to the hard work of cleaning up and bringing things back to where they are, or where they were. Pardon? We have to get back to where things were before the earthquake. I've been very impressed by the heads of the departments of the city, heads of departments of the state, particularly Caltrans, who have already starting the architectural and engineering work to restore the damaged parts of the freeway, to clean up the rubble so that the surface streets in the area can be used in the near future. I'm very complimentary to MTA, to Caltrans, to the Department of Transportation of the city and the other departments who are working on plans to ease the traffic problems during the following days. It's not going to be easy, but I think in the city we have the leadership that's going to make it happen with the help of the governor, with the county, which has been great. The county immediately offered resources. We used a number of their strike forces from their fire department. Their emergency center was with us immediately, and I thank Yvonne Burke, who is head of the Board of Supervisors, for being there very early in our emergency operations center below City Hall. So in closing, I think now might be the appropriate time to ask Supervisor Burke to say a word.
Well, thank you. We certainly appreciate the speedy action by the governor and by the federal government. Let me assure you that the county will be making sure that health services continue. We only have one hospital, county hospital, that has been closed, and that will be for 48 hours because of gas and because of our concern for the electrical problems. If that's solved, we will be able to take those people who are being turned away from other hospitals. There's something like 5 hospitals that are closed, but those are private hospitals except for Olive View, and we will be able to provide health services. In terms of roads, our public works people are there. They are monitoring the whole flood system, and also we have had a couple of dams that have had some problems, but we are on top of it. We're working with the state and with the city of Los Angeles. We are making all of our inspectors available to the city to go into city areas to determine if buildings are safe, because they will have to be determined safe before people enter once there's been determined there's some structural damage.
Governor, one quick question. What are you specifically going to be doing? What specific things are you doing? What specific things are you going to be? Jim Giggins with Channel 4 News in Los Angeles. What specifically is the state going to do for Los Angeles?
We're going to do whatever the city and county request of us, whether it be providing guardsmen to assist local law enforcement in policing areas that might otherwise be targets for looting. We will obviously, as you have heard from Mayor Reardon, be working through Caltrans to expedite the removal of the debris and the letting of contracts insofar as that's required, but completing the inspection work to determine what the state of safety is of those structures that have been damaged and also those that are standing. One of the unhappy ironies of this situation is that as a result of Loma Prieta in 1989, the state Caltrans, I think quite logically, divided all of the freeway bridges in the state into 3 classes, those that they put as high risk, those as medium risk, and those as low risk. And the purpose of that was to schedule work to address the greatest risk earliest. The high risk structures have been completed. The work on retrofitting those has been completed. 90% of the work on the medium risk, One of the next projects, one that was actually scheduled for retrofit in February of this year, was the Santa Monica Freeway.
Governor Wilson, how soon can victims expect any kind of financial assistance from the state?
Well, as you know, most of the financial assistance comes from the federal government rather than the state, but they can expect it very quickly. I was very pleased when, in the wake of the fires in October, I think we set a record in opening the federal and state centers, the so-called DACs, for the victims of those fires. When I spoke with the president this morning and when I had spoken earlier with James Lee Witt, his director of FEMA, they intend to complete the paperwork today, and I think they will be out here just as quickly as they possibly can.
Let me just mention, James Lee, who is head of FEMA, Senator Feinstein, and HUD Secretary Cisneros are on a plane right now for Los Angeles and should be landing about 5 o'clock this evening.
How soon will National Guard
The National Guard be
follow up on that. Were these freeways and bridges that collapsed, were they in the medium or the low risk range?
They were on the low risk.
And how soon were, for instance, the 18 and some of these other freeways scheduled, other than the Santa Monica?
I can only tell you about Santa Monica, but they were all in the low risk category.
Where will National Guard troops be placed? What's the first priority for them?
That will be determined by the local law enforcement authorities. They have requested that, the mayor and Chief Williams have requested it, and they will be placed in accordance with their wishes.
When? Will that be tonight or will that be tomorrow?
Before the evening.
How soon before Caltrans will have an idea of how long it will take to repair the freeways?
That's a technical question the engineers would have to answer. The removal of the debris can occur pretty rapidly. The question as to whether or not there can be a restoration of normal traffic and a reopening obviously is another question.
The state's financial problem, where do you get the money to pay for it?
Well, the work on the retrofitting has proceeded after the expiration of the temporary quarter-cent gasoline tax. That's proceeded largely with federal funds. And there is more federal funding that is in the works. I think it's probably a virtual certainty that more will be requested.
Do you believe an inquiry is needed, legislative or congressional, particularly as far as Route 14, Interstate 5, that has collapsed? The second time it's collapsed after the 71 earthquake. Should there be a real scrutiny into this problem? Was there negligence involved?
Obviously, I don't think it would be appropriate. I don't know whether it was, and I think what we're more interested in doing right now is repairing damage, making people safe. But if an inquiry is in order, well, then let it proceed. But there's no way that I can respond to that at this point.
Disaster after disaster, it seems like every time we see you anymore, it's like another $1 billion. Where is this going to end?
I've been trying to figure out which one of us it is that is the jinx.
Seriously, I mean, how much can we take economically?
This is obviously not helpful. It does not help anyone. The people who, of course, are suffering the most are the victims. And they are the ones to whom we are making the effort to extend emergency shelter where they need it, emergency loans. That is what the FEMA programs and the limited state programs are all about. Obviously, it is a tremendous drain in terms of the public cost to repair and to restore these structures and to, in several cases, take some preventive measures.
Mayor, do you think there will be a need for any business owners to protect their businesses the way they had to do after the riots?
I think it's prudent to, obviously, to pay attention to your business. Some of the shopping centers are having, security there already. The governor, through the National Guard, is working with the police department, and what they're going to do is spot the National Guard at certain key retail areas so that the police aren't needed there and they can roam around more looking for things. We did have some early problems with looting. They weren't really big, but I believe that Chief Williams and the police department have them pretty well under control right now.
Will any shop owners have to sit there with handguns tonight?
My suggestion is that they do not do that. I think they can cause more problems for themselves and for looters, but I think that's a professional question, and we should leave it up to the police.
How many people in total have been affected by this earthquake in general terms? Do you have an estimate of any sort?
I have none. No.
Governor, by 1994, after Loma Prieta, they had said that Caltrans had said that the bridges and retrofitting would have been by 1994. Were these low priority bridges behind schedule?
I don't think they were behind schedule. The schedule is a matter of public record. The only thing I can tell you is that we have completed the high risk and 90% of the medium risk. And I am advised by Caltrans that they are greatly relieved about that, because they think that if that had not occurred, the damage and very likely fatalities would have been much greater.
Mayor Reardon, you mentioned that there was some looting. How serious was that looting, and does LAPD have it all under control?
I don't know if the chief is here with us now. He can answer that much better than I can. He felt very confident that they would have it under control when I talked to him about it 2 hours ago. And we were just together a few minutes ago, and he didn't mention anything about it. So I believe that it's pretty well under control, but it's something we have to watch very carefully.
Any specific area there where there was more looting?
I have no idea.
In the valley, yeah.
Senator Feinstein has just walked up behind the governor. Senator Feinstein.
Oh, hi, Senator, you're here. What'd you come by? Supersonic jet or something?
UAL.
Is that right?
Okay, how are you?
Senator Feinstein, your reaction to what your response to the earthquake this morning? Step up to the microphone, please.
Well, as one who comes from San Francisco, my reaction is that, we have some increased earthquake probability in the area. We've had 2 moderate quakes in 4 or 5 years, which have had substantial impact, but one on San Francisco, Loma Prieta, and one here. I spoke to the president at LAX, and he said he would have the disaster declared. He probably told you that. He said he talked to you.
Yeah.
He would have it declared by 1 or 2 o'clock our time, and that a team was coming out with 2 cabinet secretaries, Cisneros and Pena. James Lee Witt is on his way.
And on a personal level, Senator, you've seen some of the damage here. You've seen some of the anguish. Your response personally, your gut reaction, if you will.
It's terrible. You feel so powerless, and an earthquake just, it creates a kind of a fear that is hard to handle. And I think one of the things that I've seen are a lot of very calm people helping others, and that is really the spirit. That's what matters more than anything else. I think the city has a very good handle on emergency services. The mayor told me that mutual aid had been activated. The governor has already declared a declaration of emergency. So all the things are in place that should be. And it's just like the water coming down this pathway, these things are going to happen. One of the things I noticed from the air is that water storage facilities seem to be holding, and that's really very good news.
Governor, your personal reaction also, you were here during the fires, for example. On the heels of the fires, this earthquake, you're the governor of California, your reaction?
Well, you begin to wonder how much Angelenos are really expected to take. I have to say that my reaction was very much the same as Senator Feinstein's. There seems to be a remarkable resilience, and also these tragedies do seem to bring out the best in an awful lot of people. For every looter, I'd say there are more than 1,000 people who go out of their way to try to provide comfort, try to provide some solace. These are times of terrible stress, and for those who are the direct victims, they are incredible in terms of impact. No one else can really, I think, possibly know if they have not experienced it themselves. But both here and I might say that 5 years ago at Loma Prieta, I saw incredible acts of courage, incredible acts of generosity. And those are the Californians that I know. I just wish that we were saved the test and the demonstration of that kind of compassion and guts.
Mayor Reardon, we're showing right now on Channel 4 News pictures of people lining up at supermarkets. There seems to be that kind of fear, that kind of uneasiness. What can you say to perhaps ease their fears?
I don't think it's necessary to load up on food. There's nothing to indicate that we're going to have a recurrence of what happened early this morning. I can't guarantee it, but I think it's very foolish because, and it's one where, in effect, they're looking out for themselves without thinking of other people. I think that what we should do is think of each other, treat things as normal, and by the way, if there ever is any real problem, we will get plenty of food from the outside. So there's no reason to panic or to do anything unusual.
And people will be notified if there's a problem with the water. The last indication was that the water is still safe. They're checking it. Yeah. But as soon as if there's any indication that because of any of the breakage in terms of lines, that there's a water problem, people will be notified immediately to use the boil water or to do something else.
Actually, there's been a little change in that, Yvonne. The Department of Water and Power suggests that people boil their water now. They're being very conservative, but I think it's smart to be conservative. All the water that is in the lines now is chlorinated once. But what the city does is chlorinate it twice. They chlorinate it before it goes in the reservoir, and they chlorinate it as it comes out of the reservoir. In some areas of the city, the water is not being chlorinated coming out of the reservoirs, so that the suggestion of DWP is that you boil your water.
Sarah, can you talk about the structural failures, the collapses of buildings as far as building codes? Do you have any indication whether it was simply to be expected for these buildings or that there might be some...
No, I don't know anything. I was observing with Supervisor Burke and Governor Wilson as we went through that you couldn't find any rhyme or reason in the buildings that were destroyed. Some of the buildings that were high risk, like brick libraries, things like that, stood up very well, and some buildings that were relatively new fell down. So it's very hard to determine. It's like the freeway on 5. Apparently, what happened is the one section of the freeway buckled, and the other section slid under it, and then when it came down, all the damage was done. I don't know how you predict those things.
Are you going to be looking at building codes as far as...
No, I have no knowledge of that, no.
Senator Feinstein and Mayor Reardon and Governor...
There you see it. Senator Feinstein, Mayor Reardon of Los Angeles, and the Governor of California completing a news conference at which the governor said, and I quote, "Thank God it occurred at 4:30 in the morning on a holiday." Those words clearly ring true for the millions of people in the greater Los Angeles area who experienced this horrific earthquake at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time. Right now, we can tell you we have 24 persons confirmed dead in the Los Angeles area, 14 confirmed dead at that Northridge apartment complex, which collapsed right at the time of the earthquake. We have 5 reports of heart attacks at Holy Cross and Cedars-Sinai Hospital, 2 dead at Sherman Oaks as a house collapse there, and a couple of other deaths, one from a fall and a broken neck, another woman apparently who fell as well. We continue to get reports in through the area of heroics, people being saved from the rubble, and rescue operations ongoing. From that news conference, some sense of just exactly what workers and officials here are up against. 5 hospitals are closed in the area, according to Supervisor Burke, who spoke there as well. 1 county hospital, 4 private hospitals. A building collapsed at a Kaiser Permanente facility. The mayor says it is prudent for business owners and areas of significant commercial traffic to beef up their security, security guards being brought in, the National Guard being deployed in some areas to reinforce police. Mayor Reardon saying that residents in Los Angeles should be boiling their water now. In some areas, dams have been compromised, and some city water is not being chlorinated. So these are the sorts of things, then, that California residents, Southern California residents, are now coping with. The worst may be yet to come when this holiday day passes and people have to take back to the roadways to go to work and school and keep their various appointments around the city. The mayor saying that Caltrans and other state and local organizations are trying to work to come up with alternate routes. We also want to tell you that in just a short 7 minutes or so at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, President Clinton is expected to speak from the Oval Office on this matter. We will, of course, carry it live. For now, we're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back after this.
world's finest hotels, they know how to make you feel right at home. No wonder so many offer AT&T. You can use it to call the U.S. at these fine locations. For the personal touch at better hotels, just ring. Your international calls made simple. It's all part of the iPlan from AT&T.
Two interesting facts have just emerged from a 1993 study of AGB data on major brands in the recession. Even in growing markets, advertisers who reduce their spend lose brand share, whereas advertisers who increase their spend tend to increase their brand share, especially in declining markets. For the full story, call the Association of Media Independents on 071 971 0091.
Television, radio, the printed word, all report the news. But who covers the people who cover the news? Reliable sources, a weekly look at the press with Bernard Cow, Sunday on CNN International.
If you can't be there for all the excitement of global sports competition, on the field and around the track, stay on top of the action, the scores and the highlights with CNN International every hour round the clock. And remember, CNN International brings you live coverage of breaking news from around the world.
The Iraqi president here is determined.
Live updates from Europe and the global hotspots.
The residents of Sarajevo forced to dodge snipers.
News features on lifestyles worldwide. International business programs. Plus live reports from the world's financial capitals. In-depth global weather. And interviews with entertainers and experts on international issues.
I get asked in lots of interviews, who are you prepared not to like?
For sports, news, business, and weather, turn to the one source seen in over 200 countries and territories. CNN International, the world's news leader.
CNN International updates global weather 24 hours a day. Look for the forecast for selected cities in your region and travel advisories worldwide. CNN International, your source for news, business, and sports, is now the place to turn for global weather.
January 17th, 1994, a day that will be long remembered by the millions of people who make their home here in the Los Angeles area. An earthquake tore through the city early this morning, 4:31 a.m. Here you see a picture from Northridge, California, where an apartment complex collapsed, killing so far, as we know, 14 people. Elsewhere, a freeway at Sylmar collapsed as well. At least 2 that we know of died there. In just a few moments, President Clinton from the Oval Office will have our coverage continuing.
Once again, war is raging in Europe. Once again, people are dying and starving. Once again, refugees have no place to go. Winter makes conditions even worse. What are you doing about it? Austrian Television ORF, together with Austrian Red Cross and Caritas, has initiated Neighbor in Need. So far, more than 1,500 trucks loaded with food and other urgently needed supplies have been dispatched to former Yugoslavia. If you would like to contribute to the charity drive, please send a check to Neighbor in Need, P.O. Box 1000, A 1091 Vienna, Austria, Europe.
This is CNN International.
Welcome to Tower Hill. In front of me is the tower. On the right-hand side is our face.
Sights and Sounds of England, one of 210 countries and territories where you can watch CNN International.
This is a presentation of CNN Business News. From CNN London, this is World Business Today with Grant Perry.
Good evening. This is a special shortened edition of World Business Today. CNN International will resume coverage of the California earthquake in a few minutes. Russian President Boris Yeltsin today accepting the resignation of Reform Chief Yegor Gaidar. At the same time, pledging he will not waver in his radical market reforms. Gaidar, viewed in the West as a key figure in Russia's economic evolution, announcing Sunday he is stepping down. Siobhan Darrow reports from Moscow.
Barely a day after U.S. President Bill Clinton left Russia with assurances that reforms would continue, Russia's chief reformer announced he was quitting. Yegor Gaidar, architect of Russia's transition to a market economy, says it's impossible for him to pursue his policies in the present government.
The worst possibility is when you are joining the government that is making a decision with which you could not agree.
Gaidar left the government once before, forced out a year ago and replaced by the more conservative Viktor Chernomyrdin. Last September, he took up a post as first deputy prime minister, but the ranks of those opposed to his shock therapy grew within the government and among the people, whose protest vote in December parliamentary elections made clear reforms were too painful to endure.
Up to this moment, there was a kind of balance between the radical liberal reformers, represented by Mr. Gaidar and his team, and pragmatics, represented by Mr. Chernomyrdin.
And it was President Yeltsin who had to referee. But more and more reformers complain they've been abandoned by the president.
1993 wasn't a year of reforms. It was a year of imitation reforms.
One man mentioned as a possible replacement for Gaidar, Grigory Yavlinsky, says he doesn't want the job and has little faith in the president's future. Is this the end of Mr. Yeltsin? Are we going to see elections this year?
I think that is the beginning of the end.
Fears that Gaidar's departure could spell doom for reforms sent the ruble plummeting to an all-time low. But despite all the political flux, the chairman of an American investment fund says it's business as usual.
I am confident that the reforms will go ahead. I've always maintained that as much as I like and respect Mr. Gaidar, that none of this is irreversibly tied to any one individual.
What course Russian reforms will take now depends on who stays in the government. A cabinet reshuffle is expected to be announced any day, and the new players will likely steer clear of the Gaidar path of radical reform. Siobhan Darrow, CNN, Moscow.
Attention has now shifted to Russian Finance Minister Boris Fyodorov. Today he said he has been offered the same job in the next Russian government and was considering taking it. There has been speculation that Fyodorov would follow Gaidar's example and quit the government. German industrial giant Metallgesellschaft preparing to slim down and slash jobs. And that got a vote of confidence today from investors. They pushed the stock sharply higher in Frankfurt. They closed up more than 12% in a down market. Bank creditors on Saturday agreeing to a financial rescue plan. Without the deal, the mining to financial services conglomerate faced bankruptcy. Under the bailout, MG is expected to slash personnel costs by 700 million marks. That could mean the loss of 7,500 jobs. The 3.4 billion mark package includes three basic elements: a rights issue, a debt-to-equity swap, and a new credit line worth 700 million marks.
The banks have gone along with the plan because it's the best hope they have of getting any return on this investment. They, I think, are in the hole to the tune of nearly 8 billion marks in total. That's all 120 banks together. And that's a very, very big sum that they wouldn't get close to recovering if they tried to wind up the operation all in one go today.
The reorganization plan includes the sale of a Dutch trading company, some international mining activities, and MG's interest in a German automotive parts company. Another German company, Porsche, is expected to announce record losses when it releases 1992-93 results tomorrow. An earlier forecast from the luxury car maker put group net losses at around 240 million marks, $136 million. That's compared to a $37 million loss the year before. But analysts say deep cost cuts already taking effect at Porsche should improve the firm's bottom line in 1994. Porsche cut its workforce by more than 16% last year. Workers at Fiat staging a 2-hour strike at the automaker's two largest factories. The industrial action coming after talks between Fiat and trade unions broke down Friday over slated job layoffs. The auto group is planning to cut 12,000 jobs, with temporary redundancy notices being sent out today to more than 6,000 Fiat employees. Fiat's auto division is expected to post its first loss ever in 1993. The unions are arguing for job sharing schemes and guarantees that factories facing closure will be converted for other use. Shares in Fiat unfazed by today's action. The stock was up 61 to 4,400. Europe's share markets tugged in two different directions, with Paris and Frankfurt sliding, while Milan and London gained ground. Paris shares switching into reverse mid-afternoon due to sharp losses in Elf Aquitaine shares. The CAC 40 falling 27, about 1.25%. Elf Aquitaine sliding 9, about 2% ahead of its 1993 results, being posted tomorrow. LVMH dipping 92. Matre Hachette was off 10. The DAX index closing down 4. In the after-hours market, stocks losing ground on Russia worries. Commerzbank was up more than 1. The Frankfurt market giving a cool reception to its link-up with Swiss insurer Winterthur. The shares dropping in after-hours trading. Allianz dipping 27, Shearing falling 8. In Milan, the VCI vaulting ahead 12, about 2%. Shares boosted by the setting of general elections on March 27. Montedison leading the market forward on its bullish prospects for the year. The stock was up 52. Olivetti picking up 111. After the market closed, unions and management agreeing to a plan for 2,000 job cuts. Banca Commerciale Italiana was off 42. In London, the FTSE rising 7 today. Guinness slipping 11 after Nomura cut its 1993-94 profit projections. Sun Alliance rising 7, and Costain was up 3.5. That's our special shortened edition of World Business Today for this January 17th. After this commercial break, we'll rejoin CNN's live coverage of the earthquake in Southern California.
This has been a presentation of CNN Business News.
Mastering the trends of tomorrow by anticipating them today. This is what being an insurance provider means to us. At AGF, we have over 175 years of insurance expertise. because tomorrow is decided today. AGF Insurance.
The jungles of Indonesia. The challenge? To find natural gas and deliver it to the Far East. Mobil discovered the gas and helped develop a plant to convert it into a liquid, so it could be shipped in special tankers to the place it's needed most. The reward? A dependable supply of clean energy at people's fingertips. Mobil.
If you've ever said, I think they should keep advertising out of sport, well, the next time you're watching your favorite team, you might consider that advertising probably covers 50% of the cost. So you choose. Without advertising, it would, as the saying goes, be a whole new ballgame. Advertising. The right to choose.
Many Filipino children still suffer from diseases like measles, TB, and polio. Some even die from them. When you buy UNICEF cards, you help buy the vaccines that prevent these diseases, or your money will help street children or reach out to a malnourished child. So next time you need a greeting card, buy UNICEF cards and help Filipino children. May card ka na, nakatulong ka pa.
From the folks on the ground there. They've got enough of a traffic jam with those three interstates messed up as it is.
Mr. President, what went through your mind this morning when you first were told about this earthquake? We understand you called your brother right away.
Well, the first thing, I guess I was a citizen first. First thing I did was pick up the phone and call my brother because I knew that he lived very close to the epicenter of the earthquake. And I called him probably at 5:15 their time, so it was maybe 35 minutes or 40 minutes after the earthquake had occurred. He was fine. He said they'd suffered some, some significant disruption in movement there in his apartment, but they didn't have any significant loss. So I felt good about that. And then I went to try to get another report, and then I started calling folks in California in a more official capacity. But of course, like all of you, I was able to watch it all unfold on television. It was really something.
Do you anticipate a need to activate federal troops to come to the aid of rescues?
If we need to do it, we can. We're organized to do it. But again, I want to wait until I get a report back from Mr. Witt after he talks to the mayor and the governor and others involved out there. We've had a pretty good record of, we've had experience working with the folks in that area. Ironically, we've got some sites that were made available for emergency aid during the fires that could still be activated rather quickly. I mean, our folks are in place there, and the contingencies that they need to think through, I think have pretty well been thought through. So we should be able to give you a much better report tomorrow sometime. Thank you.
President Clinton having his remarks from the Oval Office, and as you saw there at 5:08 Eastern Time, 3:08 Pacific Time, the President signed the emergency declaration that will free up some short-term funds for efforts underway here to clean up the rubble and assess the damage and make some things available to people who so badly need them, principally authorizing funds for low-interest loans, cash grants, and that sort of thing. Our coverage of the earthquake in Southern California this day in January 1994 will continue.
When stress takes its toll, wouldn't it be great to have your very own personal masseuse to soothe and relieve tension? When routine jobs become painful, wouldn't it be great to call on a shiatsu massage therapist to melt away sore, aching muscles? Theraflex presents the Pro Shiatsu Personal Massager. Unlike vibrating massagers that only rub the surface, Pro Shiatsu simulates the kneading action of a real masseuse, sending penetrating waves of energy to relieve pain, stress, and sore muscles. It's easy to use. Simply apply Pro Shiatsu wherever you need it, anytime, anywhere. It never gets tired. Pro Shiatsu Deep Soothing Massage actually gets right to the pressure points, providing instant relief. Pamper aching feet with a soothing and relaxing massage. It works miracles on the lower back and improves circulation on calves and thighs. Pro Shiatsu Massager is portable and lightweight. Imagine getting a relaxing massage at the office while you work, or take it along when you work out for deep muscle relief. Use instant reverse to send waves upwards to the neck and shoulders or downwards through the whole body. There's nothing that soothes, relaxes, and relieves aches and pains like the Pro Shiatsu Massager. Now you can enjoy the luxury of a massage in the comfort and privacy of your own home at a price you can afford. A professional masseuse can charge up to $50 per hour, and catalogs have advertised similar units for as much as $200. Now you can order the Pro Shiatsu Massager at the special price. Don't delay. Order now.
For credit card holders and for details on how to pay in your own currency, call your local number on screen now. Operators are standing by to take your order. If lines are busy, please call later, but do call. You can order in all of these countries, so don't delay. Call your local number, and we'll deliver right to your door. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Call now. You can order in all of these countries, so don't delay. Call your local number, and we'll deliver right to your door. Call now.
I'm Frank Sesno in Los Angeles, where our coverage of this terrible earthquake continues amid the heroic efforts to save what can be saved at this hour. Here's what we know right now. 24 persons are confirmed dead, the worst single location at an apartment building in Northridge, California, very close to the epicenter of the earthquake that registered 6.6 on the Richter scale. 14 people are known dead at the apartment complex. 2 hospitals, Cedars-Sinai and Holy Cross, have been quoted reporting 5 dead so far between the 2 hospitals of heart attacks. A facility at Kaiser Permanente has collapsed. Several areas of freeway along the Santa Monica Freeway and the Simi Valley Freeway have collapsed and been closed. Those closures, especially along the Santa Monica Freeway, bringing 2 other fatalities, including a California highway patrolman. Those collapsed freeways promise to create havoc in the days ahead here in California, which is so terribly dependent upon freeways and automobiles. Elsewhere, the mayor says that there have been some instances where the chlorination process with city water has been disrupted. He urges city residents to boil their water. He also urges those in shopping complexes to consider increasing their security, as there have been some reports of looting. The state's governor has authorized the National Guard to be deployed. They are being deployed in some commercial centers, thus freeing up police to go on patrol. Our Ann McDermott is standing by now in Northridge at a shopping center there where there has been considerable damage. And what are you seeing? What can you tell us? Any other individuals caught there, or is this just structural damage?
Well, behind me, this was a parking structure at one time here at the Fashion Center shopping mall, a large shopping mall. And just about half an hour ago, we saw the conclusion of a very dramatic rescue. A man known only to his rescuers as Salvador, who was employed by the custodial staff here, had been down in the lower level of this parking structure in a small sweeper truck cleaning up when the quake hit. Co-workers heard his cries for help, and within a short time, several firefighter units were on the scene, and thus began a dramatic rescue effort that took about 8.5 hours. What the firefighters had to do was use wood and ladders and airbags to inflate and lift the concrete off the man. He was buried under several layers of this parking structure, and ultimately they opened up a small hole that they were able to get in. They sent 6 firefighters down in to help further extricate this man. However, it got very scary at one point. There was an aftershock, a very strong one. One firefighter was actually knocked to his feet after this aftershock. And the people around here were extremely frightened that the rescue effort might be thwarted. However, it worked. They got the man out. We don't know his condition. He was flown to UCLA Medical Center. He does have injuries, but he is alive.
And let me ask you this question, if I may. We saw the very tail end of that incredibly dramatic rescue you talked about. And one of the things that went through my mind as I was seeing these firefighters and others pull this individual out of the wreckage was that they are doing this amid continuing aftershocks that we are feeling. There is significant risk out there for those who are performing these rescue operations.
It is very dangerous, and quite frankly, they are very brave to do this. As I said, the one firefighter was literally knocked to his feet by a very strong aftershock. There aren't many people that would do that for any amount of money.
And what about the people you have spoken to as you've gone around, the people of Los Angeles? They've been through so much lately.
They have, and they're getting tired of it. One person said to me, well, when's the plague of locusts arriving? I thought that was a pretty good attitude. A lot of people are numb, particularly people that have lost a lot, and they're frightened. But there's sort of a calm that's descending on the city. I noticed it late this morning. People are getting used to it. A lot of people are going about their business. The city is hardly shut down, but parts of it are quite devastated.
And I'd like to ask you about that, because we by no means want to underestimate the damage and the destruction here. But for people who have loved ones or friends who may be watching from the outside, they are seeing primarily scenes of destruction. As you've driven about, how much destruction is there? Can you give us a sense, an overview of how bad the situation is citywide?
You will, driving along the street, you will see an apartment house here that's collapsed or buckled. Another one maybe 4 or 5 structures down. We're talking about, Los Angeles is a great big city. The San Fernando Valley, while densely populated, is only part of it, of course. I don't want to minimize the damage. There has been a lot, but it is not as though the city is in ruins, certainly.
And what is happening now behind you? The efforts continue. Is there suspicion that there are other individuals in any way trapped in that rubble?
No, they have no suspicions there is anyone. They may be just doing a few last-minute checking it out. No one was known to have been in there. I think they're beginning to clean up, probably pulling some of their equipment out.
Okay, Ann McDermott, thanks very much at the Northridge Shopping Center. We appreciate your time. Do take care as those aftershocks continue to rumble. Well, the people of Southern California have been sharing their experiences with us throughout the day. We share some of their thoughts and emotions with you now.
I was sleeping there with about 4 or 5 of my buddies, and we ended up running out of the house. We came outside, we looked over to the house next door. All the neighbors started coming out over here. We were worried about the house to our right that ended up burning down. We ran in with like 3 or 4 of my fraternity brothers, and we ran in there. And they were asleep. They slept right through it. Ended up just pulling them out and brought them outside, and then.
Jason, was anybody hurt in this immediate neighborhood that you know of?
Yeah, what happened was this truck right here, this white dually.
Right.
We had the water. I guess the line broke or something like that. And what happened was, this truck tried to shoot through it, ended up igniting the fire somehow, and it blew up. We were all out here. It knocked us all down.
I don't know. It stalled. What about the people in the truck? Do you know the person in the truck?
I believe they're deceased. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
One of them jumped out of the truck. He was on fire when he jumped out of the truck. The driver. There was a passenger. What happened was this was all just water that was first just shooting into the air about 75 feet. And we set up these little stalls, these little posts, the cones to just stop people from coming in. This guy came in through that side, and it was just a poof. It wasn't an explosion. It just went poof, and then just fire. It's just straight in the air.
I was in the apartment. We were sleeping. My nieces and my children were over spending the night, and the floor just started shaking, and I was trying to drag my son to the doorway, and he was so afraid he didn't know which way to go. And then I went in the room, and the ceiling had fell on my baby's head, and I was just praying to God that he would just let everybody be okay.
The ceiling fell on your baby's.
The ceiling fell on the baby's head. Yes.
Was there
There was
what
a big
did you see when you went into the room?
I couldn't really see because the lights went out, all the electricity was out. All I did was feel in the bed, and the whole piece of plaster was over him, over the top of him, and he wasn't crying or anything, and I was kind of scared. but he was okay, and the kids were okay, and we just decided to come out because we didn't know if it was going to start falling again.
Everybody must have been pretty scared. Tell me a little about that.
Yes, they were all crying and screaming, and they didn't want to get in the doorway. They didn't want to get up out of the bed, and I just had to practically drag them. My niece had to drag my daughter and my other niece out of the bed, and I had to try to get the other ones up too because they were all frightened.
We're going to Santa Monica, and we're coming down the freeway, and we felt the earthquake. We felt everything shake, and when my husband kind of panicked, and I told him to stop, but he kept on going, and we just the bridge just split in half, and we went over the side when it went up.
What happened to your car?
It went head first down. It went head first, and we just had to stop. We just completely stopped, and the car isn't running. We have to leave it there, and we have to wait till dawn to get a ride.
I was on the 8th floor of the hotel, and in a dead sleep, and was woken. I thought my roommate was just messing around, shaking the bed. He'd never been through one, and it wasn't. It was for real. I mean, it was. Immediately, I realized earthquake. Yelled, Mike, come over to get under our door facing. So we jumped under a bathroom door, the door facing, and just kind of held on. I think it seemed like 30 seconds, maybe a little more. And lamps were falling and crashing, and glasses, and things. And it kind of eased off, and the building kept swaying. So immediately we grabbed shoes and whatever you see on us, hit the nearest exit. And I noticed a lot of busted water pipes and that kind of thing.
I don't know what happened. I was shocked, and I was shocked, and I left my room. I was scared. I thought it was my last day. I just arrived yesterday from Paris.
Welcome to the U.S.
Thank you very much.
So my first inclination is to get under something or in a doorway like you're supposed to do, and that's what I tried to do. I tried to get under my bed, but there's no under my bed. So then I just got in the doorway and I wrote it out, and then I tried to get out as fast as I could.
So you two guys aren't really fazed by this?
Well, it means we can't go to work tomorrow, probably, or today. We probably can't go to work, but I called my mom as soon as I got out of bed and told her I was okay, I mean, you don't know when we're going to be able to call anybody, or I don't even know what's going on. I wish I had a radio right now.
Yes, we're on the 17th floor of our hotel, and everything that was on a shelf or on the wall is now on the floor, and we just had to run to get out of there and run down the fire exits, which were full of water, to get out. And we're just out on the street now, sort of making sure nothing will fall on our heads. This your first earthquake?
Absolutely. First time in LA and first earthquake. We went to San Francisco first, and we were a bit concerned there, but it got us here.
Well, you're laughing and smiling now, but when it happens.
Well, I'm laughing and smiling because I believe the earthquake's over. I hope we're not in the middle of it.
If you've ever been in an earthquake, you know it is a terrifying experience. You feel terribly powerless. I have been in earthquakes before this one, gentle rocking motions that hardly feel like they're threatening. This one was something altogether different. I recall at 4:30 in the morning, and I was not aware of the time. I was dead asleep. It feels as if someone is coming to the foot of your bed, grabbing it by the frame and shaking it as hard as they can. That's certainly disorienting, but far worse were the creaking sounds in the house. It felt as if the roof was going to fall in. I could literally hear the windows shaking in the window frames. No windows broke. A television in an adjacent room, a large one, about a 20-incher, fell off of a shelf along with a few other objects. You could feel things falling, and the darkness, the total darkness, made it all even more disorienting. People who live here in California, I do not know that in an earthquake you're supposed to move into a doorway and stand in the doorway. That's the reinforced part of the house. I didn't know what to do. For a moment I thought about getting under the bed, but then I felt that if we fell through the floor, the bed would fall on me. So in the end I decided just to stay there. At least it was warm, if dangerous. In the end it all stopped where I was, about 27 miles south or so of the epicenter of the earthquake. The damage was relatively mild. The electricity was back on, but elsewhere in the city, as we know, vast sections were without electricity. Parts of the freeway crumpled. For many, this is a nightmare that hasn't stopped yet. Our coverage of the earthquake of Southern California will continue after this.
If you can't be there for all the excitement of global sports competition, on the field and around the track,
Stay on top of the action, the scores, and the highlights with CNN International every hour round the clock. And remember, CNN International brings you live coverage of breaking news from around the world.
The Iraqi president here at the Turk.
Live updates from Europe and the global hotspots.
The residents of Sarajevo forced to dodge snipers.
News features on lifestyles worldwide. International business programs. Plus live reports from the world's financial capitals. In-depth global weather. And interviews with entertainers and experts on international issues.
I get asked in lots of interviews, who are you prepared not to like?
For sports, news, business, and weather, turn to the one source seen in over 200 countries and territories. CNN International, the world's news leader.
Myron Candell, Deborah Marchini, Stuart Varney, Beverly Shook, Bill Hartley, Steve Young, Lou Dobbs. No one covers the world of business like the people of CNN International. CNN International keeps you informed all weekend long with world news updates at the top and bottom of the hour, the latest headlines, plus international business, weather, and sports. World news throughout the weekend on CNN International.
CNN International.
For more than 120 million viewers in over 200 nations and territories, no one covers the world like CNN International.
It was exactly 10 hours ago that an earthquake registering 6.6 on the Richter scale rocked Los Angeles. The results have been devastating. There are some 92 hospitals in the Los Angeles area. Virtually every single one of them is reporting that it is treating people who have various degrees of injuries from this earthquake. What we know right now is that 24 people are confirmed dead in today's earthquake. As we said, hospital rooms are packed. At least 5 hospitals have been closed for fear of gas leaks and the like. They are expected to reopen. One of them is public. 4 of them are private hospitals. We're going to take you now, I believe, to Robert Vito, if we've worked out the problems there, who is in Northridge at this apartment complex. Am I correct, Robert Vito?
I am. Good afternoon.
Well, I just felt an aftershock, a big one. Robert, you feel that?
Just a very slight tremor here.
Here in the studio, it was a good sharp jolt to the solar plexus. Go ahead, it's all yours.
We've felt so many, you become accustomed to them. Here at this apartment complex that about 300 people called home, 14 people have been confirmed as having been killed in that horrible quake this morning. Authorities continue to go through the rubble, hoping to find someone, any number of people that might still be alive. Hopes are dimming that that's a real possibility at this time. So they continue to go through the rubble, retrieving those who did die. They said the victims were killed instantly and as the quake just hit like a bomb. Indeed, there were a lot of brave people here today.
Violent and vicious. That's how residents described the earthquake that destroyed this apartment complex, home to about 300 people.
This was a bomb. It went off under our complex, picked it up, and threw it back down 12 feet and crushed these first floor apartments within 4 seconds.
We lost everything, pretty much. My car's a pancake.
We lost everything. My car was flattened and his truck. So we're without transportation. We have no money. We can't go in. We have no credit cards. We have nothing but what I have on my back and what he has.
Rescuers were able to save more than 24 residents trapped beneath the rubble. The building that covers nearly a half square mile actually was lifted several feet off its foundation by the quake. When it came back down, it hit with such force that the entire first floor was actually pushed beneath the ground. Authorities say it was mostly residents of the first floor who were killed.
The second floor is down at the bottom now. All the first floor is smashed. The people that were under there were killed.
My roommate and I got out alive, and I think we're only a few of the ones that got out of the first floor alive.
There were many examples of bravery. Individuals crawling through the rubble of the apartment complex. Fire officials say they were responsible for saving the lives of many people.
And we had to leave a lifetime of possessions there, and we hope we'll be able to recover it, but who knows?
So it wasn't the big one, but most people will tell you it came pretty darn close. Reporting live, Robert Vito, CNN, Northridge, California.
Thanks very much, Robert. As we mentioned, the aftershocks continue. We felt one just a short time ago. Also a short time ago, about 20 minutes or so ago now, President Clinton signed the federal disaster declaration, which authorizes the release of certain funds for this area to help those who have experienced the destruction firsthand, loss of homes, cars, potentially jobs. Some buildings, obviously, where people work have been damaged as well. As you drive down the streets here, you certainly see some with even minor damage, bricks having fallen away. Those will have to be inspected to be sure they are safe for re-entry. The damage was widespread, even though the city continues to function, from freeways to hospitals to schools. With that story now, here's Jim Hill.
Jolted out of bed by the powerful earthquake, millions of people in the San Fernando Valley awoke to sirens, flames, and chaos. Fires raged along major streets like Ventura Boulevard as gas lines broke in businesses, homes, and several large trailer parks. A number of major highways were closed as concrete overpasses collapsed. Just north of the quake epicenter, huge slabs of Highway 14 fell onto Interstate 5, the major freeway that leads north out of Los Angeles. One man was killed here and several other people were critically injured as their cars slammed into the sudden barrier that fell in front of them.
I thought I was going to die because considering that I practically didn't see the bridge until I hit it, and that I pretty much walked away because I thought I was going to die.
As emergency crews arrived on the scene, a motorcycle-mounted policeman became one of the quake fatalities. According to witnesses, the officer died as he apparently sped to the scene of the freeway collapse. In the darkness of the early morning, he and his motorcycle plunged over the edge.
And we ran over to him, and he was face down, so we very gently turned him over, and he was just bleeding uncontrollably from the mouth and the nostrils, and I mean, just there was some movement in the mouth, but it appeared that there was no breathing at that point.
Emergency crews have been stretched to the limit. Los Angeles mayor declared a state of emergency, and President Clinton immediately sent his disaster chief to Los Angeles. Residents were told to stay in their homes if they were not injured, as hospitals geared up to treat those who were, and aftershocks continued to periodically rumble across the heavily populated San Fernando Valley. Jim Hill for CNN, Los Angeles.
Well, our coverage of the great earthquake of 1994 will continue. We have correspondents out all over the city. We are also working with our affiliates, KTLA, KCAL, and KTTV, to bring you pictures and reports from areas of rescue and hardship. Our coverage will continue, along with a look at the major news elsewhere in the world after this.
They praise you for the things you never did and pan you for the rare evening of godliness.
Jack Lemmon, Matthew Broderick. 2 generations, one steeped in a lifetime of tradition, the other just beginning the life.
Could you perhaps do less?
Every night at 8,
I missed my cue. What's happening?
they become equal partners.
Good show.
In a high-risk game where the players live for applause and die for lack of it.
Are you crying?
Yes.
The incomparable Jack Lemmon.
Have I told you this lately? You are becoming a very fine young actor.
The electrifying Matthew Broderick in the new film by David Mamet, A Life in the Theater.
The hell, it's all show business.
I believe in reporting. It gets in your blood. And if something big is happening, you want to be there. I've spent my life seeing a lot of folly, bureaucracy, misery, brutality. But I've also seen gallantry and generosity and genius. I couldn't think of doing anything else. I'll probably be doing it when I'm 90.
Television, radio, the printed word, all report the news. But who covers the people who cover the news? Reliable sources, a weekly look at the press with Bernard Cal, Sunday on CNN International.
All your favorite stars, all in one place. All night, all day. It's 2 new channels in one. All across Europe. TNT and Cartoon Network. Ask your cable operator for details or tune into Astra Channel 37.
Art Buchwald, the funniest man in Washington, looks back on a charmed life. The former Marine who turned to comedy reveals the secrets of his success on Larry King Live only on CNN International.
We'll be returning to our non-stop coverage of the earthquake in Los Angeles in just a moment. Right now, we want to bring you up to date on some of the other stories making news today. I'm Ralph Winke.
Hello, I'm Natalie Allen, and here's what's happening. U.S. figure skater Nancy Kerrigan says she is trying to put aside the controversy surrounding her January 6th attack and focus only on her skating.
It's hard. This whole thing has been hard enough, for me. I don't know, if I was younger, how I would handle it. And skating is my job, in some ways, besides the fact that I love it. I worked too hard to let this really interfere. I have to, when I'm on the ice, I really have to concentrate on my skating, and that's my job, so I have to just focus on that.
Kerrigan took to the ice today in her first public practice since she was clubbed in the leg. She ran through her Olympic short program. Kerrigan's coach says she will not be ready to perform jumps until later in the week or even into next week. Her Olympic teammate and rival Tanya Harding returned to the ice in Portland, Oregon. Accusations that Harding may be involved in the alleged plot to harm Kerrigan have kept her out of public view for the most part. Yesterday, Harding's attorney said she categorically denies any involvement in the attack. Authorities in Portland say they have scheduled a meeting with the skater, but they will not say when. 3 people linked to the Harding camp have been arrested in the case. Harding's bodyguard, Sean Eckhart, Derek Smith, and Shane Stant, the man who allegedly attacked Kerrigan. Portland's Oregonian newspaper today reports authorities are investigating whether $6,500 from a Harding trust were paid out for the hit. The paper says New York Yankees owner George Steinbrenner made a sizable donation to the skating fund, and that money may have been used.
2 young Germans described as neo-Nazis have been convicted of beating and harassing 2 U.S. luge racers last October. They were part of a group accused of attacking American Duncan Kennedy as he left the German nightclub. The prosecutors said they also taunted black U.S. team member Robert Pipkins with racial slurs. One of the so-called skinheads was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months. The other got a 1-year sentence. The U.S. team was in Germany training for the Olympics.
Well, much of the focus today has been on problems in Southern California, earthquake-related, but there are problems elsewhere thanks to Mother Nature today as well.
A lot of nasty weather, and Karen McGinnis is here to talk about that. Karen?
Yeah, a lot of slipping and sliding along a lot of the roadways, especially across the southeast and into the mid-Atlantic. You can see exactly where the frontal system is. It lies right here, so it's still just about over east central Tennessee, not quite moving through Atlanta, not quite moving through Greenville, South Carolina. That's where the frozen precipitation is. A few readings are above that freezing mark, but the ride has been rather dangerous during the early morning hours and perhaps again during the early morning hours. But this is not minor, but think about the folks across the Ohio Valley where they saw between 1 and 3 feet of snowfall. I don't think anyone was going anywhere during that time. Louisville, Kentucky picked up about 1.5 feet of snowfall. South Central Ohio, all the roads are reported closed. Everything cannot get along those roads except for emergencies. And in Chattanooga, Tennessee, they're saying a number of major arteries there are closed as well. We've got another Arctic blast on its heels, so guess what? It's going to reinforce the cold air. Tomorrow night's going to be some of the coldest air across the eastern seaboard that we've seen in quite some time. 1 below currently in Chicago. It's 19 below in Minneapolis, and for Minot, 18 below. These are actual outside air temperatures. Look at this, though. Charleston, South Carolina is reporting 64 degrees. Currently, Los Angeles has been the focus of our attention all day long because of the 6.6 earthquake. You've seen coverage from since early this morning at 61 degrees there, 24 in Denver, but look at Salt Lake. It's 50 degrees, but just about everybody in the West will feel the effects of the Arctic blast as well eventually. Well, right now, we've got some snowfall in Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. Augusta, Maine is picking up some snow. Also, back over here in Topeka. Freezing rain in Baltimore, Washington, D.C. Quite a messy day there. Also, Greenville, South Carolina. Now, these are the actual outside air temperatures forecast for Tuesday, double-digit below zero readings, but the wind chill factors tonight between 50 and 80 degrees below zero. Don't go outside. Your skin can freeze very, very quickly. Even the deep south will be quite cold across Southern California, and Los Angeles could be a little bit windy once again tomorrow with temperatures back up into the 70s. Well, the news will continue right after this.
This is Peter Ustinov. In any war, those who suffer most and understand least are children. They lose their homes, schools, families, and too often their own lives. UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, is helping children in Somalia, the former Yugoslavia, and other war-torn areas. With your support, UNICEF can provide food, medicine, and blankets to thousands of children who are the innocent victims of war. Please help.
Get live financial data transmitted direct to your PC. A new service from CNN Text, Reuters 1000. CNN brings you business programs, CNN Text, and now Reuters exchange rates, stocks, futures and commodities live 24 hours with the power to analyze the data as it arrives. Reuters 1000. a unique subscription service from CNN Text.
CNN International updates global weather 24 hours a day. Look for the forecast for selected cities in your region and travel advisories worldwide. CNN International, your source for news, business, and sports, is now the place to turn for global weather.
I'm Frank Sesno in Los Angeles, where our coverage of the California earthquake continues. As of this hour, 24 persons are confirmed dead, some 270 said to be wounded, injured to one degree or another from the earthquake that struck this area at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time this morning as Los Angeles slept. The millions of people who lived here jolted awake in the middle of their sleep, wondering whether the big one, as it's come to be known and feared, had finally struck. This is not said to have been the big one, but as we've noted, it came awfully close. The governor of the state of California said, "Thank God it happened at 4:30 in the morning and on a holiday," and surely that is an understatement. For the fatalities and casualties that we have registered already surely would have been far worse had it occurred at a busier time of day or at a day that was a normal working day here in Southern California. It has indeed been a day of horror and of heroism. Now, some sounds and sights from around the area as recorded this day.
The lights are out and we need to know that you're all safe.
Jeez. All right? Yeah, it's just everything's just a headache. That's what I tried to do. I tried to get under my bed, but there's no under my bed.
And everything that was on a shelf or on the wall is now on the floor, and we just had to run to get out of there and run down the fire exits, which were full of water.
Crazy how water and fire all at the same time.
Yo, come on, bro. Let's go. We know how to do it. Here.
Hey, get the mud in there.
Go on, they go down and get out the back.
Good line.
There we go. Now we got it back. We got it go. Come on, ain't gonna be us.
I don't know what happened. I was shocked and I was shocked, and I left my room. I was scared. I thought it was my last day.
We got all the brush around there, Skipper. All you can do, thanks.
It was a rolling, rumbling sensation, but it was very sharp.
I found a little doorway and stood in it, and just kind of worried about where I'm going to live, maybe.
And the floor just started shaking, and I was trying to drag my son to the doorway, and he was so afraid he didn't know which way to go. And then I went in the room, and the ceiling had fell on my baby's head, and I was just praying to God that, you know, he would just let everybody be okay.
We were coming down the freeway, and we felt the earthquake. We felt everything shake, and when my husband kind of panicked, and I told him to stop, but he kept on going, and we just came up, the bridge just split in half, and we went over the side when it went up.
What happened to your car? It went head first down.
The truck tried to shoot through it, ended up igniting the fire somehow, and it blew up. We were all out here, it knocked us all down.
When it hit, I realized this was a lot bigger than the normal earthquakes I've been through. It didn't start off very slow, it just hit very violently. And I was almost to the door, and I guess the building collapsed, and I was thrown over backwards.
Just a few of the sights and sounds here in Los Angeles today. A terrifying day for those who experienced this earthquake. It was a very, very scary earthquake indeed. A very violent shaking motion that broke the stillness of the early morning hours, 4:31 a.m. Pacific time. Since then, there have been well over a dozen aftershocks, some of them quite strong, as a matter of fact, according to seismologists, some of them pushing the 5 level on the Richter scale, those quite significant as well, raising a lot of concerns that additional damage will be recorded now, since many buildings and structures, including underwater pipes, gas mains, freeways, of course, were badly damaged in the initial phases. So these are the sorts of things that we are confronting. We want to take you now to KTLA, one of our affiliates here. They are showing some aerial pictures at this hour from the Northridge area. This is where that apartment building collapsed. So far, as we've mentioned, 14 known dead there. It is in this general area that a derailment, a freight train derailed. That train, according to the Southern Pacific Railway, was carrying some hazardous materials. No leaks reported, but it shows you the sorts of things that you take for granted that can happen. Let's listen in as we get this aerial tour over Northridge.
The numbers on the Richter scale, it's not arithmetic. And so the difference between a 6.6 and a 7 is tremendous. Yes. A 6.6 to a 7.6 is about 30 times greater. The 7.6 would be 30 times greater than a 6.6. Well, people have a right to expect that if we are living in earthquake country, that the freeway is going to be there should there be an earthquake.
We have started to tell people lately that in case there is a big one, to protect your own self, it's important that you try not to be stuck under a freeway overpass. And I understand now that we have Warren Wilson in the West Valley who has some updated information for us. Warren?
Northeast end of the San Fernando Valley. This is the city of San Fernando. This is one of 4 houses either destroyed or heavily damaged in a fire this morning. The fire erupted on this corner here, and as you can see, there's a car. We are told that there's as many as 14 cars damaged on the street, in the street. You can see how hot it was. It just melted everything down in this one car. It is typical of the cars that we saw all along the street here. As we move down to the corner, you can see 2 other cars that were sitting here and burned up. We continue on, and there are other cars just lined up across the street here. We can see a house that partially burned when this corner erupted into a ball of fire. The problem was that an underground pipeline carrying crude oil erupted, running down the street, slow, but it did run and give off some fumes.
Casualties in that area where you are?
And those fumes had a source that ignited this whole area.
Can you tell us more?
And set the whole area on fire. We're going to move on over here and give you an idea of just how many cars were involved as we look down this street all the way down there, where these cars were parked and burned on the spot. This is a couple of blocks on Wolfskill, across the street from O'Melveny Elementary School. On the sidewalk here, I'm going to show you a motorcycle. If you can see that, the ruins of a motorcycle. The driver of that motorcycle, I'm told, was driving here to check on his parents, and when he reached this spot, it just erupted, and he was burned and taken to a hospital. There were utility poles also caught on fire and burned, cutting off electricity into this area. We're going to turn over here now. Four Corners Oil Company sent crews out, and they are now trying to repair this pipeline by digging it out. They have found the source of the break. They have to replace it, and in the meantime, they have brought lots of sand in here because they felt that there was still somewhat of a danger.
And Warren,
with the oil still down, some of it still running, although they have shut down the pipeline, but they still thought there was a danger here, and they brought in some sand to try and reduce that to a minimum risk. That's about the story here. 14
Our thanks
cars.
to our affiliate KTLA for taking us on that tour. Earlier in the day, I had seen some interviews with residents of that area. They described one car after the other just blowing up in succession as the explosion moved down that underground pipeline that the correspondent was referring to. Our thanks also to affiliates KCAL, KTTV, and KCOP for their help and cooperation, for helping furnish their coverage throughout the day. The very dramatic pictures would not have been available without them, and of course without the valiant efforts of our crews and correspondents who have been out since the very early hours of this very frightening morning across Los Angeles. Bringing you up to date at this hour, there are 24 confirmed dead. There are some 270 people injured to one degree or another as a result of the great earthquake of 1994 that struck at 4:31 a.m. Pacific time this morning. I'm Frank Sesno. I'll be back later with Judy Woodruff with The World Today. When we come back, we will have emergency numbers for the Los Angeles area in case you've been trying to get through and cannot. And of course, the very latest earthquake information. Again, we will be back in just a moment. We hope you'll stay with us.
CNN International.
CNN International. It began with a simple idea: keeping the world informed 24 hours a day.
I think this was an amazing sight.
Covering global business and world markets 7 days a week. Reporting the vast scope of international sport. Updating global weather conditions around the world. Turning the spotlight on entertainment, theater, and film.
Pacino puts all the power into Scent of a Woman.
The latest trends in fashion, design, and style. In-depth reporting on today's health, environment, science, and technology. Live coverage of major global events from an international perspective.
Russia's crisis is unfolding.
And encouraging an exchange of ideas on television's only global talk program.
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
In a complex world, there's always CNN International, keeping the world informed. It's just that simple.
This was not a regular earthquake. This is not the kind of thing when you do this rock and roll type thing that I felt for the last 26 years. This was a bomb.
An apartment building collapses, killing more than a dozen residents inside.
I thought I was going to die because considering that I practically didn't see the bridge until I hit it.
A freeway overpass buckles and crumbles. A policeman falls to his death.
The water, I guess the line broke or something like that, and what happened was this truck tried to shoot through it, ended up igniting the fire somehow, and it blew up. We were all out here, it knocked us all down.
And when the rumbling stopped, the fires began. We'll devote most of the next hour to the big earthquake in Southern California.
This is The World Today with Judy Woodruff at CNN Center in Atlanta and Frank Sesno on assignment in Los Angeles.
The people of Southern California are taught to be ready for earthquakes, but nothing could prepare them for what happened about 10.5 hours ago. At 4:31 local time, the strongest earthquake to hit the region in more than 2 decades shook the Los Angeles area for about half a minute. In all, 24 people are now confirmed dead. The region's highway system is in shambles. Several overpasses have collapsed. Roads have buckled. Some of the main arteries in and out of Los Angeles are closed. Fire has been a big problem. The quake ruptured gas lines, which quickly ignited. Entire neighborhoods in the northern San Fernando Valley went up in flames. My colleague Frank Sesno was in Los Angeles when the earthquake struck. He joins us now with more. Frank?
Well, as fate would have it, Judy, I was here, completely coincidental, I assure you. Many of the people who died in the quake lived in a single apartment building in an area called Northridge, near the epicenter. CNN's Robert Vito is there. Robert?
You don't hear Frank Sesno, and I know he's going to be talking to me.
Apparently we're having Bob, but Bob, go ahead.
Frank, at this apartment complex, it happened in just an instant. The bottom portion of the building just collapsed, and 14 people would die. Authorities for hours now have been searching for more survivors, and just moments ago, a few minutes ago, they called off that search.
Violent and vicious. That's how residents describe the earthquake that destroyed this apartment complex, home to about 300 people.
This was a bomb. It went off under our complex, picked it up, and threw it back down 12 feet and crushed these first floor apartments within 4 seconds.
We lost everything, pretty much. My car's a pancake.
We've lost everything, and my car was flattened, and his truck. So we're without transportation. We have no money. We can't go in. We have no credit cards. We have nothing but what I have on my back and what he has.
Rescuers were able to save more than 24 residents trapped beneath the rubble.
I want to know who you're voting on.
The building that covers nearly a half square mile actually was lifted several feet off its foundation by the quake. When it came back down, it hit with such force that the entire first floor was actually pushed beneath the ground. Authorities say it was mostly residents of the first floor who were killed.
The second floor is down at the bottom now. All the first floor is smashed, and the people that were under there were killed.
My roommate and I got out alive, and I think we're only a few of the ones that got out of the first floor alive.
There were many examples of bravery. Individuals crawling through the rubble of the apartment complex. Fire officials say they were responsible for saving the lives of many people.
And we had to leave a lifetime of possessions there, and we hope we'll be able to recover it, but who knows?
I think what's tough now is that for a lot of people, reality is setting in. And they've come to realize that it's going to be a long time before life returns to normal. Frank?
Robert, we heard the woman you quoted in your piece just a moment ago talking about how she'd lost everything. Where is she and the other persons from that apartment building? Where are they being taken now?
Well, thanks to the Red Cross and the Salvation Army, several evacuation centers have been set up throughout many areas. And as far as we understand, all of these people will be taken care of in shelters with food, with beds, and some nice conversation to maybe take their minds off the tragedy that they have endured.
Now, you say rescue officials there have called off their search. Do they believe there are no more survivors there? Are all the people from that apartment building accounted for at least, or not?
That is not clear, but what officials have said to me is that they don't believe there are any people inside the building that are alive. They're still going through the process of retrieving bodies, but they don't believe anyone is alive.
Robert, you are at the apartment building that, for now anyway, appears to be the worst single site as a result of this earthquake, where the most people have died. I don't know if your cameraman can hear me as we speak, but perhaps he can pull wide and we can see what the area looks like. In addition to that apartment building, what are you seeing in the area? Is it a total scene of destruction, or is it a patchwork of collapse?
I think patchwork is the most appropriate. As you drive down the streets, what you see are windows broken out. You see portions of buildings that have fallen to the ground, bricks, glass, wood, varieties of debris, people walking around the glass. And then, as in always that I've seen in cases like this, you come by a building that doesn't have a scratch. The windows are in place. Nothing seems to be disturbed.
Okay, Robert Vito, thanks very much.
Thank you, Frank.
To take care. Well, a collapsed parking deck at a Northridge shopping center nearby was the scene of one of the day's most dramatic rescue operations. CNN's Ann McDermott is there, joins us now with more on that. Ann?
Frank, I'm in front of the parking structure. Let me amend that. I'm in front of what used to be the parking structure at the Fashion Center in Northridge, which is a very large shopping mall here. And as you noted, it was the scene of a dramatic rescue just about an hour ago. When the quake hit, this structure all of a sudden just collapsed onto itself, while a man named Salvatore was inside operating a small sweeper truck. He's part of the custodial unit here. Firefighters came to the scene shortly after that, and for the next 8 hours, they worked to free him. They had to lift the concrete using planks of wood and ladders and airbags, and they had to do this in between aftershocks, a very tricky operation. Every now and then, a gas would go up from people as a large aftershock hit. One time, a firefighter was knocked over, but they kept right on working. They got the man out. His exact condition is not known. They believe he has 2 broken legs. He was flown to UCLA Medical Center, and apparently they said his pulse was good. All in all today, it has not been a good morning in the San Fernando Valley. An apartment building in Sherman Oaks split in 2 by the quake, and Terry Cooper was inside at the time.
And I opened my front door. There was no building. It was gone. And so I screamed a lot.
This house was shaken off its foundations. This building, another total loss. So is this one, and much of what was inside.
We felt it falling down. I mean, you can see it fell down one floor. My car is a pancake there in the back.
Her car, lots of cars, and lots of lives. The McNeils were lucky. They got out in time, just after the gas main exploded.
Oh, it was just the biggest boom. I never heard a noise like it in my life.
Tremendous explosion.
Just the explosion. Never heard anything like it. And then just the flames and the heat coming in the house was unreal.
And now they have nothing. Hundreds like them jammed convenience stores for water, for flashlight batteries. And here anyway, the frightened residents were getting a break.
Everything is at discounted prices. You know, they're just trying to help everybody out.
As they waited in line, they talked about how bad the quake was.
Much worse than any hurricane or tornado that I've ever been through. I grew up in Kansas, and of course they have a lot of tornadoes there. I'd take a dozen tornadoes over what just happened today.
Down Ventura Boulevard, blown out glass glittered in the sunlight, with merchandise spilling out onto the sidewalk. A decorative panther seemed to be trying to escape the chaos. For others, there wasn't much escape.
No, I don't have any escape.
Where are you going to live?
I don't know yet.
For many, the cleanup is already underway, a cleanup that'll take days for some. As for Terry Cooper, resident of the split-apart building, she said she had this advice for her neighbors.
Move out of Southern California.
Now, I must say that those are not the sentiments of everyone, certainly not the sentiments of the majority here. Most of the people we have talked to said they are going to clean up and stay put. But there are some people that are wondering why they're living here.
And this disaster, in many ways, it certainly would seem at first glance, has pulled people together in a remarkable way. I was struck on the way into the Bureau here today that at intersection after intersection where the lights or the power was gone, people were orderly. They were taking turns moving through the intersection. We've had some reports of looting, but they've been relatively minor so far. What sorts of things have you seen?
That has been my experience as well. And another thing, shortly after the quake hit, I've heard this from people in neighborhoods all across this valley. The first thing people on a street would do would be go check on their neighbors, walk up and down the street and see if everyone's okay and make sure they've gotten out if they were, wanted to get out of their houses. In fact, I know that from personal experience. My neighbors did the same thing. And I have seen people have been very polite, as you noted on the driving in on the freeways, every area where there's no light, people take their turns. People waiting in lines to get at convenience stores to buy water and flashlights. They are standing very calmly, very quietly, talking among themselves. They are pulling together here.
And perhaps you can, again, if your cameraman can hear me, he can pull wide and start showing us some of the other scenes there, or you can ask him to do so as we proceed here. Tell us precisely what you're seeing, not only up close there, but in the larger area, and reflect, if you would, on What you suppose would have happened had this occurred in the middle of the day?
Well, I hate to even reflect on that, to be honest. If this had occurred in the middle of the day, it would have been loaded with cars. It would have been loaded with people getting in and out of those cars, and there would have been many, many more deaths. It's the parking structure, what's left of it, and most of it is just pushed downward. We were fortunate that it happened so early in the morning. We were fortunate that it happened on a holiday for many people.
That's right, Ann McDermott, thanks very much. Governor Pete Wilson earlier saying, thank God it happened at 4:30 in the morning and on a holiday. And amid the destruction and the death and the injuries, there are millions here in Los Angeles who share those thanks. Well, we will continue our expanded coverage of today's big earthquake in a moment, with a look at some of the major highways that are now closed due to collapsed overpasses.
The heat coming in the house was unreal. Unreal.
So the house was on fire while you were actually inside?
Yeah.
The front of the house.
The front of the house
was burning, so we
were trying to get things out.
We evacuated out through the back and
then the police
grabbed what we could and closed in this end of the house.
Hey, get the mud in there. Get the...
If you're getting bored with your hair, don't despair. Now try an exciting new look with Topsy-Tail, the incredible hair fashion tool that creates stunning, unique hairstyles in just seconds. It's so easy to use. If you can make a ponytail, you can Topsy-Tail. Simply place the Topsy-Tail in the center of the ponytail, thread hair through the loop, and pull for a beautiful new look. There's never been anything like it. And with the same basic steps, you can expertly create dozens of dazzling styles for every occasion in no time. It's all right here in the Topsy-Tail Glamour Guide. Topsy-Tail is perfect for the office. Convenient, professional, and so impressive. Create this striking style for a romantic night on the town. A dramatic look he'll notice. Topsy-Tail over a headband, or use your favorite hair accessory for the perfect finishing touch. No matter what your hair type, with Topsy-Tail, you'll look like you spent hours at the hair salon. It's also great for shoulder-length hair. Try Topsy-Tail for this smart, attractive style. Kids love Topsy-Tail too. School time, playtime, anytime. Have fun together trying all the different styles. Now you can add flair to your hair with Topsy-Tail, and it's yours for less than the cost of one visit to the hair salon. You get the revolutionary patented Topsy-Tail tool. Look again at how quick and easy it is to create the unique Topsy-Tail hairstyle. Plus, you get the Glamour Guide with 50 photos and illustrations. Simple instructions for all the fabulous styles. Order now and we'll also send you secrets to French braiding. You'll be amazed how simple it is to create this elegant style. So go ahead, create a whole new look and a whole new you with Topsy-Tail, the amazing new hairstyler you'll use every day.
For credit card holders and for details on how to pay in your own currency, call your local number on screen now. Operators are standing by to take your order. If lines are busy, please call later, but do call. You can order in all of these countries, so don't delay. Call your local number, and we'll deliver right to your door. Your satisfaction is guaranteed.
Angelenos have been urged to stay home today, and with good reason. Throughout Southern California, many major highways and other thoroughfares are impassable. Chunks of fallen rubble cover some, while ruptured gas lines and collapsed overpasses obstruct others. Jim Hill reports.
Jolted out of bed by the powerful earthquake, millions of people in the San Fernando Valley awoke to sirens, flames, and chaos. Fires raged along major streets like Ventura Boulevard as gas lines broke in businesses, homes, and several large trailer parks. A number of major highways were closed as concrete overpasses collapsed. Just north of the quake epicenter, huge slabs of Highway 14 fell onto Interstate 5, the major freeway that leads north out of Los Angeles. One man was killed here and several other people were critically injured as their cars slammed into the sudden barrier that fell in front of them.
I thought I was going to die because considering that I practically didn't see the bridge until I hit it, and that I pretty much walked away because I thought I was going to die.
As the emergency crews arrived on the scene, a motorcycle-mounted policeman became one of the quake fatalities. According to witnesses, the officer died as he apparently sped to the scene of the freeway collapse. In the darkness of the early morning, he and his motorcycle plunged over the edge.
And we ran over to him, and he was face down, so we very gently turned him over, and he was just bleeding uncontrollably from the mouth and the nostrils, and I mean, just there was some movement in the mouth, but it appeared that there was no breathing at that point.
Emergency crews have been stretched to the limit. Los Angeles mayor declared a state of emergency, and President Clinton immediately sent his disaster chief to Los Angeles. Residents were told to stay in their homes if they were not injured, as hospitals geared up to treat those who were, and aftershocks continued to periodically rumble across the heavily populated San Fernando Valley. Jim Hill for CNN, Los Angeles.
Okay, we are now going to check in with Jane Wells, who's out and about and is going to bring us up to date from her vantage point. Jane, first tell us where you are.
Well, Frank, I'm on the northbound 5, just south of the 14 interchange. Here is where the interchange fell and collapsed. You know, thousands, tens of thousands of commuters use these freeways every day. Fortunately, today was a holiday, so there weren't that many cars here. As you can see, though, miraculously, except for the one tragic fatality here, most of the people got out alive. The guy who was driving in this car, the guy who was sitting right behind